Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto was the Kryptonian sage, a god-tier hero from a lost world. Naruto x Supergirl, DC Comics. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Last Sage. The desert winds howled across the excavation site, carrying ancient secrets in every grain of sand. Dr. Elena Michaels wiped sweat from her brow, squinting at the massive stone door they'd uncovered 3 days prior. Hieroglyphs unlike any known language spiraled across its surface, symbols that seemed to pulse with an inner light when touched. "This isn't Egyptian. It's not Sumerian either," she muttered, tracing her fingers along a distinctive spiral pattern. "I've never seen anything like it." Behind her, Hinata Hyuga stood motionless, lavender eyes fixed on the doorway. Unlike the other researchers with their modern equipment and excited chatter, she remained silent, a sentinel in traditional clothing that seemed out of place among the scientific expedition. The Hyuga clan had insisted on sending their heiress when news of the discovery reached them. What the archaeologists saw as merely another interesting find, her family recognized as something far more significant. "It's really here," Hinata thought, fighting to maintain her composed exterior while her heart thundered in her chest. After 15 generations of waiting. When the team had Saint discovered the structure buried beneath the desert, they'd believed it to be another forgotten temple. But as they'd dug deeper, they'd found technology embedded within stone, metal unlike any known alloy. Circuitry that seemed impossibly advanced yet ancient. "We're ready to open the main chamber, drive," Michaels announced, nodding toward the engineers who had finally deciphered the locking mechanism. "Everyone stand back." Hinata stepped forward instead. "I should enter first," she said quietly but firmly. "Miss Hyuga, with all due respect, your foundation may be funding this expedition, but this is a scientific. My family has protected this secret for centuries," Hinata interrupted, her voice stronger than usual. "There are protocols that must be followed before drive." Michaels could argue further. The massive door began to move on its own, stone grinding against stone as an unseen mechanism activated. The team froze, scientific instruments forgotten as ancient air rushed outward, carrying the scent of ozone and something unidentifiable. Hinata's Byakugan activated instinctively, veins bulging around her eyes as her vision penetrated the darkness beyond. What she saw made her breath catch. "Everyone, stay here," she commanded, all traces of her usual shyness vanished. Then she stepped through the doorway alone. The chamber beyond defied all archaeological precedent. Crystalline structures lined the walls, emitting a soft blue glow that intensified as she moved deeper into the room. At its center stood a raised dais, and upon it, a translucent pod of unknown material, neither glass nor plastic, housing the figure of a man. Her family scrolls hadn't exaggerated. The last sage of Uzushio had survived. Hinata approached slowly, heart racing as she observed the figure. He appeared to be sleeping. Young, perhaps her age, with distinctive whisker-like markings on his cheeks and bright blonde hair. He wore armor of unfamiliar design, crimson and navy blue with spiraling symbols that matched the door's hieroglyphs. According to the ancient texts, he was Uzumaki Naruto, last survivor of a civilization that had vanished millennia ago. A being of immense power. The scrolls called him many things: hero, destroyer, savior, harbinger. The Hyuga clan had been divided for generations about whether awakening him would bring salvation or ruin. Her fingers bled as she placed her palm against the surface of the pod. It was warm to the touch, pulsing with energy she could see with her Byakugan chakra, but unlike any she had encountered before, mixed with something cosmic. "Hinata, Doctor," Michaels called from the entrance. "What have you found?" The other researchers were pouring into the chamber now, exclamations of shock and wonder filling the eye and space as they beheld technology that shouldn't exist in a structure dating back thousands of years. "As that a person?" One of the junior researchers stepped closer, reaching out toward the pod. "Don't touch it," Hinata warned, but too late. The moment the researcher's fingers brushed the surface, the entire chamber hummed to life. The crystalline structures brightened from soft blue to brilliant white. and the pod began to emit a high-pitched sound that forced everyone to cover their ears. "Everyone out!" Dr. Michaels shouted, but Hinata remained rooted in place, watching as fracked Ur lines appeared across the pod's surface. Inside, the young man's eyes snapped open, startlingly blue and disoriented. The pod shattered outward, sending crystalline shards flying across the chamber. Researchers screamed, ducking for cover as ancient technology surged with power. Naruto Uzumaki drew his first breath in over 3,000 years and immediately cried out in pain. He collapsed to his knees, hands clutching his head as memories and sensations overwhelmed him. Fires consuming the crystal spires of Uzushio. The screams of his people. His parents' faces as they sealed him away. "Live, Naruto. When you wake, our world will be gone, but you must carry our legacy." YAMGs. Where, Akirato? Words spilled from his lips in a language none of them understood, none except Hinata, who had studied the ancient tongue since childhood. "You're safe," she responded in the same language, her pronunciation careful but clear. "The danger has passed. You've been asleep for a very long time." His head snapped up, blue eyes focusing on her with startling intensity. "You speak the tongue of Uzushio. How? Where are my people?" The anguish in his voice needed no translation. One of the researchers stepped forward, a scanner in hand, muttering about unprecedented readings and impossible energy signatures. The device emitted a sharp beep as it pointed toward Naruto. The sound triggered something in the disoriented sage. His eyes widened in panic, and suddenly the air around him distorted. The stone floor beneath him cracked as gravity itself seemed to warp. Researchers were thrown backward as objects began to float and then accelerate randomly around the chamber. "His powers are unstable," Hinata shouted. "Everyone get out now." The team didn't need to be told twice. Scrambling toward the exit as ancient artifacts and modern equipment alike became dangerous projectiles. Dr. Michaels hesitated at the doorway. "Hinata, come on, go," she called back, activating her Byakugan fully as she approached Naruto. The chakra pathways within him were unlike anything she'd ever seen, a fusion of human networks and something that resembled solar energy, both systems chaotically overloading after millennia of dormancy. Outside the chamber, the ground began to shake. The vibrations weren't coming from Naruto, however. Something else was approaching, something massive. Naruto sensed it too, his head turning toward the temple entrance despite his disorientation. "GKKZSH. Coming," he managed, struggling to his feet. The sound of helicopter rotors filled the air, followed by explosions at the excavation camp. Screams echoed from outside. "We're under attack," Hinata realized, helping steady Naruto. "Can you walk?" He nodded weakly, leaning against her as they moved toward the exit. Each step seemed to help him regain control, ancient muscle memory returning despite his obvious confusion. They emerged into chaos. Black-clad commandos had surrounded the excavation site, their uniforms bearing no identifying marks. Researchers fled in panic as gunfire strafed equipment and tents. 3 attack helicopters circled overhead, spotlights sweeping the ground. "There, primary target acquired," a voice shouted over a loudspeaker, and suddenly all attention focused on Naruto. Hinata pulled him behind a fallen stone column as bullets impacted where they had stood moments before. "They knew you were here," she realized. "Someone sent them specifically for you." Naruto's expression shifted from confusion to determination. Despite the language barrier and his weakened state, the situation required no translation. His eyes tracked the helicopters, calculations running behind them. "Stay," he told Hinata, the word accented but clear, the first English he'd spoken. Then before she could stop him, he was moving. What happened next would later be described by surviving witnesses as impossible and godlike. Naruto leapt from behind the column, his body suddenly accelerating to blinding speed. As bullets tracked toward him, he seemed to perceive them in slow motion, weaving between them with precision no human could match. He had the nearest commando and disarmed him with a technique Hinata recognized as an ancient taijutsu form known only from Hyuga historical texts. But where the scrolls described it as requiring precise chakra control, Naruto executed it with raw physical power that sent the man flying 20 meters. The helicopters opened fire, minigun rounds tearing up the desert floor. Naruto looked up, and for a brief moment, his eyes glowed crimson. Then beams of intense heat shot from them, slicing through one helicopter's tail rotor. The aircraft spun out of control, the pilot barely managing to crash land away from the camp. "Impossible, Doctor," Michaels whispered from where she had taken cover beside Hinata. "What is he?" "The last sage of Uzushio," Hinata answered, watching as Naruto continued to move with increasing confidence. His body remembering skills his mind was still processing. The scrolls say he was their greatest warrior, infused with power from the stars themselves. The remaining commandos were retreating now, falling back to defensive positions as they realized their target was far more formidable than anticipated. One fired what appeared to be a specialized weapon, not bullets, but a net of glowing energy that expanded in midair. It enveloped Naruto, and for a moment he struggled, crying out as the net seemed to burn where it touched his skin. Hinata could see with her Byakugan that it was disrupting his chakra flow. They had come prepared for him specifically. They know what he is, she realized with mounting dread. Naruto's face contorted with effort, and then with a roar that shook the very air. He expanded his chakra outward in an explosive burst. The net shattered, releasing a feedback pulse that disabled every electronic device within a 100-meter radius. The remaining helicopters faltered, systems failing as they retreated. In the sudden silence that followed, Naruto stood breathing heavily, his armor damaged but his posture once again strong and centered. He turned back toward Hinata, and their eyes met across the devastated camp. Then he collapsed. Naruto dreamed of crystal spires and floating gardens, of his mother's red hair catching the light of 3 moons. He dreamed of training grounds where gravity shifted according to will, and libraries where knowledge transferred directly from crystal to mind. He dreamed of fire and screaming, of the elders, chambers where the decision was made. The child carries our strongest bloodline. He must survive, even if nothing else does. When consciousness returned, it came in fragments. Soft fabric beneath him, the hum of an engine, motion, voices speaking a language he almost understood, words occasionally clicking into place in his mind. Unprecedented. Energy readings off the scale. Clearly humanoid but cellular structure. Hyuga clan's involvement suggests they knew. He kept his eyes closed, other senses extending outward as he'd been trained. 5 people in the vehicle with him. One sitting very close, the woman with eyes that could see through deception. An ally, his instincts told him, though he didn't know why. When he finally opened his eyes, he found himself lying on a makeshift bed in what appeared to be a large transport vehicle. Scientific equipment surrounded him, much of it damaged, likely from the pulse he'd released. "You're awake." It was the woman with the strange eyes. She spoke carefully in his language, though with an accent that suggested it wasn't her native tongue. "My name is Hinata Hyuga. My family has been waiting for you to return for many generations." Naruto sat up slowly, noting the way the others in the vehicle tensed at his movement. "Return? I never left. I was." The full realization hit him then. The stasis chamber. The words of his parents. How long? Hinata hesitated. According to our records, Uzushio fell 3,247 years ago. The number struck him like a physical blow. Everyone he had known, everything he had been prepared to protect, gone for millennia. He closed his eyes, processing the impossible reality. "How do you speak my language?" he finally asked. The Hyuga clan was Entrus. Ted with preserving knowledge of Uzushio, she explained. "We maintained records, language, prophecies, waiting for the day the last sage would awaken." "Prophecies," Naruto repeated, a bitter edge to his voice. "The elders spoke of prophecies too, as our enemies broke through the final barriers." He looked down at his hands. "For all their foresight, they didn't save our people." "Doctor." Michael stepped forward cautiously. "Excuse me, but we need to establish some facts here. You are from an ancient civilization, one that possessed advanced technology." Naruto studied the woman, his mind rapidly assimilating the unfamiliar language structure as he listened. The stasis chamber had been designed not just to preserve his body but to prepare his mind, neural pathways reconfiguring during his long sleep to help him adapt to whatever world he might awaken to. "Uzushio," he said, testing the modern tongue on his lips. "Island. Nation. Advanced in ways you would call science. Also ways you might call magic. Magic doesn't exist, one of the researchers said dismissively. Naruto smiled faintly, raising his palm upward. A spiraling sphere of energy formed above it, rotating with increasing speed until it illuminated the entire vehicle. Your language lacks proper words. We called it chakra, the energy that connects all living things, and connects living things to the cosmos. The researchers stared in fascination at the Rasengan, instruments frantically recording data. Hinata alone seemed unsurprised, though her eyes tracked the sphere with something like reverence. Those men who attacked, Naruto continued, allowing the sphere to dissipate. They knew what I was. How? An uncomfortable silence fell over the group. Finally, Drive, Michaels spoke. We don't know. Our expedition was supposed to be classified. But clearly someone had information about what we might find. The clan elders feared this, Hinata added. There have always been interested parties monitoring our activities. The Hand of Fate has many branches, not all of them aligned. The Hand of Fate, Naruto questioned, an organization dedicated to preserving and controlling knowledge of Uzushio, Hinata explained. They broke from the Hyuga centuries ago over philosophical differences about the prophecies concerning your return. Naruto processed this information, his expression revealing nothing of the turmoil within. 3,000 years, a world unrecognizable from the one he'd known. Factions waiting for his awakening with their own agendas. Where are we going? He finally asked, noting the vehicle's continued movement. A secure facility, Drive. Michaels answered. The attack means we need protection until we understand what we're dealing with. You mean until you understand what I am, Naruto corrected. His gaze direct. The scientist had the grace to look embarrassed. You have to admit, your abilities are extraordinary. The way you moved, the energy you manipulated, those beams from your eyes. My powers are returning gradually, Naruto interrupted. When I was placed in stasis, I was at reduced capacity. The chamber was designed to slowly restore me upon awakening. Reduced capacity? One of the other researchers asked incredulously. You took down a helicopter by looking at it. Naruto didn't respond to that, instead turning his attention to the window. The landscape outside was barren desert, but in the distance, he could see the approaching outlines of a city, structures reaching toward the sky in a way that reminded him painfully of Uzushio's crystal towers. That is Metropolis, Hinata told him, following his gaze. One of this world's great cities. This world, Naruto repeated softly. Is it worth protecting? The question hung in the air, carrying weight none of them could fully comprehend. Before anyone could respond, the vehicle suddenly swerved violently, tires screeching as the driver fought for control. We've got company, the driver shouted. 3 black SUVs, closing fast. Through the rear windows, they could see the pursuing vehicles, each bearing the same unmarked appearance as the commandos who had attacked the excavation site. The lead SUV pulled alongside them, and a man leaned out the passenger window, aiming what appeared to be an advanced weapon. Get down, Doctor, Michaels yelled as the weapon discharged. Instead of bullets, it fired a pulse of energy that sliced through the side of their vehicle like paper. Equipment sparked and exploded as the beam cut a line across the interior, narrowly missing the occupants. Naruto moved with liquid speed, grabbing Hinata and Dr. Michaels and pulling them to the floor as a second pulse fired. The researchers huddled in terror as their transport began to lose control. Veering toward the highway barrier. They're hurting us, Naruto observed calmly, assessing the tactical situation with trained precision. 3 vehicles, coordinated attack pattern. They want to capture, not kill. Capture you mean, Drive. Michaels said. The rest of us are expendable. Naruto's eyes narrowed. No one is expendable. He looked at Hinata. Your eyes? They see chakra pathways, yes. Like the Byakugan masters of my time. She nodded, surprised. You know of my family's ability. The Hyuga were respected allies of Uzushio, he replied, then gestured to the pursuing vehicles. Can you see anything unusual about our attackers? Hinata activated her Byakugan, veins bulging around her eyes as she peered through the vehicle's structure. They're enhanced somehow. Their chakra networks have been artificially modified. And their weapons, they're powered by something similar to chakra but corrupted. Naruto's expression darkened. Uzushio technology. Adapted by those who don't understand its principles. Dangerous. He turned to the others. When I move, stay low and brace for impact. Before anyone could question him, Naruto stood upright in the moving vehicle. His body seemingly unaffected by its violent swaying. He placed his palms against the roof, and with a controlled burst of strength, tore it open like foil. Wind rushed in as he climbed onto the top of the vehicle. Facing their pursuers, the highway stretched before them, other cars swerving wildly to avoid the high-speed chase. In the distance, the skyline of Metropolis loomed larger. The lead SUV fired another energy pulse. Naruto didn't dodge. Instead, he reached out with one hand and seemed to catch the energy itself, his palm absorbing and redirecting it in a display of chakra control that left Hinata gasping. Impossible, she whispered. The scrolls mentioned this technique, but called it theoretical, the ability to absorb and redirect energy attacks. Naruto gathered the captured energy, compressing and reshaping it before hurling it back at the lead vehicle. The pulse struck with precision, disabling the engine without causing a catastrophic explosio. And that might have endangered other motorists. The SUV swerved and slowed, falling behind. The remaining two vehicles accelerated, pulling alongside their transport on both sides. Armed men leaned from the windows, firing conventional weapons now. Bullets pinged harmlessly off Naruto's skin, falling away like rain. His eyes glowed briefly, and precision heat beams disabled the weapons without harming the wielders. I don't want to hurt you, he called out, his voice carrying despite the wind. Stand down. Their response was to ram the transport from both sides, metal screaming as the larger SUVs crushed them between their bulk. Naruto leapt upward just as the vehicles collided, hovering momentarily above the highway, not flying with Superman's grace, but manipulating gravity and air with H-chakra in a way that allowed controlled movement. He created two shadow clones in midair, a technique that caused Drive Michaels to cry out in shock as three identical Narutos descended upon the attacking vehicles. Each clone landed on one SUV, hands plunging through metal to physically remove the steering columns. With the precision of a surgeon, Naruto disabled both vehicles without causing them to crash catastrophically, gradually bringing them to controlled stops along the highway shoulder. Their own transport, however, had suffered too much damage. The driver was struggling to maintain control as they approached an overpass. The steering failing and brakes unresponsive. Everyone hold on to something, Naruto shouted, dispelling his clones and leaping back to their vehicle. He landed just as it hit the concrete barrier, metal crumpling around them as the transport flipped onto its side and skidded toward the edge of the overpass. Time seemed to slow for Naruto as adrenaline and chakra flooded his system. He saw the point of failure, the barrier giving way, their vehicle about to plunge 30 meters to the highway below. In the city beyond, civilians were stopping to watch the unfolding accident. Some already recording with devices he didn't recognize. I can save these few, but expose myself to many, he calculated in an instant. Or I can hide what I am and let them die. It wasn't really a choice. As the transport broke through the barrier and began to fall, Naruto moved with inhuman speed, gathering the 5 occupants into his arms and leaping clear of the vehicle. They hung suspended for a moment at the apex of his jump, the researchers' screams fading to shocked silence as they realized they weren't falling. Naruto descended gently to the highway below, setting them carefully on their feet as the transport crashed behind them, erupting into flames. Around them, traffic had stopped completely, dozens of witnesses staring in disbelief at the young man, who had just performed an impossible rescue. Phone cameras recorded as Naruto stood tall amidst the chaos, his damaged armor catching the sunlight, the spiral symbol of Uzushio clearly visible on his chest. Wind ruffled his blonde hair as he scanned the surroundings, making sure the danger had passed. Are you hurt? He asked Drive Michaels and the others, seemingly oblivious to the sensation he was causing. Hinata stepped forward, acutely aware of their audience. Naruto, everyone is watching. Your existence, it was supposed to remain secret until we understood the implications. He glanced around, finally registering the attention they'd attracted. I understand secrecy, he said quietly. In Uzushio, we hid our advancements from the outside world for centuries. But I will not hide at the cost of innocent lives. As if to emphasize his point, a new sound cut through the air, the distinctive noise of failing metal. All heads turned toward the overpass, where the damaged barrier was giving way further, threatening to drop a section of concrete onto the vehicles stopped below. Without hesitation, Naruto moved. One moment he stood beside them, the next, he was a blur of motion, positioning himself beneath the falling debris. As hundreds watched in person and thousands more through rapidly spreading social media, he caught a 20-ton concrete slab on his shoulders, muscles straining visibly for the first time as he carefully lowered it to the ground away from endangered motorists. Silence fell across the highway, broken only by the sound of approaching sirens. Then, hesitantly, someone began to applaud. The applause spread, growing into a cheer as Naruto stood amidst the rubble, dusty but unharmed. Dr. Michaels looked at Hinata, her expression a mixture of wonder and apprehension. Well, there's no hiding him now. The world just met its first public superhuman. Hinata nodded slowly, watching as Naruto was surrounded by grateful civilians. The prophecies saw it, his coming would change the world forever. I don't think any of us understood just how quickly that would happen. Miles away, in a darkened office high above Metropolis, a bald man watched the live footage on multiple screens, his expression unreadable as he studied the blonde stranger with the spiral symbol. Interesting, Lex Luthor murmured, reaching for his phone. Get me everything we have on Uzushio Legends. And contact our friend at the Hand of Fate. It seems their prophecies are coming true ahead of schedule. In another location, a dark-haired woman in a cape hovered outside her apartment window, watching the same footage on her television through the glass. Kara Zor-L's eyes widened as she witnessed Naruto's feats of strength and speed. He's like me, she whispered. But different. She focused on the spiral symbol, committing it to memory before flying toward the scene. Whoever this new arrival was, Supergirl intended to find out. And deep beneath the city, in chambers untouched for millennia, ancient machinery hummed to life, responding to energies it had been programmed to detect. Displays illuminated in a language long forgotten, a single message repeating. The last sage has awakened. Protocol restoration begins now. Naruto stood amid the chaos he had inadvertently created, acutely aware of how exposed he had become. Emergency vehicles surrounded the area, police establishing a perimeter as medical personnel attended to minor injuries from the chase. The civilians he'd saved kept a respectful distance, but their phones remained pointed in his direction. Capturing every move, Hinata approached him, concern evident in her expression. The authorities will want to question you. We need to decide how much to reveal. The truth, Naruto replied simply. Or as much of it as they can understand. Dr. Michaels joined them, keeping her voice low. The truth, that you're a 3,000-year-old survivor of an advanced civilization with powers that defy modern science. They'll lock you in a government lab so fast your head will spin. I'd like to see them try, Naruto said, not boastfully but as a simple statement of fact. Before they could continue the discussion, a new commotion rippled through the crowd. People were pointing skyward, exclamations of surprise and excitement growing. Naruto followed their gaze, enhanced v. Scion easily picking out the figure descending from above, a young woman with blonde hair, wearing a blue uniform with a distinctive red cape and an S symbol on her chest. Supergirl, Hinata whispered, one of this world's protectors. Naruto watched with undisguised interest as the woman landed gracefully before him. For a moment, they simply regarded each other, two beings of extraordinary power, assessing one another. Hello, Supergirl finally said, offering a cautious smile. That was quite an entrance you made. Naruto inclined his head slightly, picking up nuances in her speech, posture, and energy that told him volumes. Not intentional. I prefer subtlety. When possible. Her smile widened a fraction. I know the feeling. She glanced at the damaged overpass, the disabled SUVs, the burning transport. Trouble seems to find people like us, though. People like us, Naruto repeated, studying her more closely. His senses extended beyond normal perception, recognizing something familiar yet alien in her cellular structure. You're not from this world either. Supergirl's expression registered surprise before she carefully controlled it. That's perceptive of you. She lowered her voice. Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere less public. The authorities will want statements. Drive. Michaels interjected, looking between them nervously. I can handle that, Supergirl assured her. It wouldn't be the first time I've smoothed things over after an incident. What's important now is getting. She paused, realizing she didn't know his name. Naruto, he supplied. Naruto Uzumaki. Getting Naruto somewhere secure, she finished. If someone was willing to attack you on a public highway, they won't stop there. Naruto nodded, but his attention had already shifted. His head turned sharply toward the city skyline, enhanced hearing picking up something the others couldn't detect. What is it? Supergirl asked, immediately alert. Screams, he answered. Many people. Fear. Pain. He pointed toward a distant plume of smoke now becoming visible above the downtown area. There. Supergirl's expression hardened as her own super hearing confirmed his assessment. Explosion at the First Metropolis Bank. Multiple casualties. She turned to him, a quick decision made. Want to help. For the first time since awakening, Naruto smiled. A determined expression that transformed his features. Yes. Supergirl nodded toward the sky. Can you? Instead of answering, Naruto channeled chakra to his feet and launched himself upward in a powerful leap that carried him hundreds of meters into the air. It wasn't true flight, but by continuing to pulse chakra at the apex of each jump, he could travel rapidly in massive bounds. Supergirl flew alongside him, matching his trajectory. That's not quite flying, she observed. Not yet, he replied as they soared over the city. Still remembering what I could do. They reached the bank within moments, landing amidst a scene of devastation. The front of the building had been blown outward, debris scattered across the street. Injured civilians lay moaning while others fled in panic. Fire had begun spreading to adjacent structures. Naruto assessed the situation instantly, military training asserting itself through muscle memory. Survivors inside. Structure unstable. Supergirl nodded. I'll secure the building and get the people out. Can you contain the fire? Without waiting for confirmation, she flew into the damaged bank. Naruto turned his attention to the spreading flames, analyzing them with senses that perceived beyond the visible spectrum. The fire was behaving strangely, burning hotter than it should, spreading in patterns that defied physics. Accelerant, he realized. But not conventional, something designed to resist normal suppression methods. He closed his eyes briefly, centering himself as he recalled techniques long dormant. When his eyes reopened, they shimmered with power. He swept his gaze across the flames, superchilling the air around them with controlled bursts of his freezing breath, another ability returning to him, imperfect but effective. The flames sputtered and died where the cold hit them. For areas he couldn't reach directly, Naruto created shadow clones who leapt to adjacent buildings, working in coordinated precision to contain the spread. Inside the bank, Supergirl emerged with injured civilians in her arms, flying them to safety before diving back in. On her third trip, the building groaned ominously, structural supports giving way. It's coming down, she shouted. Naruto's clones dispelled instantly, returning their chakra and information to him. He leapt toward the failing building, hands flashing through seals as he gathered an enormous amount of chakra. Sage art. Earth pillar formation. The ground beneath the bank trembled, and then massive columns of stone erupted upward, piercing through floors to create new support structures. The technique was imperfect, his chakra control still recovering, but sufficient to temporarily stabilize the building. Supergirl stared in amazement as she flew out with the last survivors. That's not heat vision or freeze breath. What exactly are your powers? Complicated, Naruto answered, breathing harder than before. The extensive chakra use was taxing his still recovering systems. Are there more people inside? No, but, she stopped abruptly, head tilting as she detected something. The bombers. They're still in the area. Watching. Her eyes narrowed as she scanned the surrounding buildings. There. Naruto followed her gaze to a nondescript van parked 2 blocks away. His enhanced vision penetrated its walls, revealing 3 figures inside. And a distinctive energy signature he recognized immediately. Uzushio technology, he said grimly. Corrupted, like the weapons used against us earlier. They moved simultaneously, Supergirl flying directly toward the van while Naruto took a flanking route, bounding across rooftops. The van's engine roared to life as its occupants spotted Supergirl's approach, tires squealing as it accelerated away. What followed was a precision urban pursuit. Supergirl kept pace above the van, occasionally using her heat vision to target its tires, while Naruto paralleled their route across buildings. Van's driver displayed exceptional skill, weaving through traffic at dangerous speeds. As they approached a crowded intersection, Naruto saw the driver's intention, to plow through pedestrians, forcing Supergirl to break off pursuit to save lives. Making a split-second decision, he created multiple shadow clones and deployed them ahead, each tackling civilians out of harm's way. Freed from this concern, Supergirl descended directly in front of the van, planting her feet on the asphalt. The vehicle slammed into her at full speed, crumpling around her immovable form like tissue paper. The doctor, Iver and one passenger were knocked unconscious by the impact, but the third occupant, a woman with stark white hair and unusual markings on her face, emerged from the wreckage seemingly unharmed. In her hand, she held a device Naruto recognized immediately, an Uzushio phase disruptor, designed to temporarily shift matter between dimensional states. Kryptonian, the woman spat at Supergirl, before turning to Naruto with an expression of religious awe. Sage-sama, you should not stand with this alien usurper. Your return was prophesied to cleanse this world of their kind. Naruto's expression darkened. You speak the tongue of my people, yet dishonor it with lies. I was sent to protect, not cleanse. They've twisted your purpose, the woman insisted, raising the disruptor. The hand of F8 has preserved your true destiny for millennia. This world will burn so that Uzushio might rise again. She activated the device, and a wave of distortion rippled outward. Supergirl cried out as it passed through her, her form becoming partially transparent as the phase shift affected her molecular structure. Naruto felt it too, a painful pulling sensation as though parts of his body were being dragged into another dimension. Phase separation, he recognized. Designed to target non-native molecular structures. It's treating both of us as alien to this dimension. Fighting through the pain, he formed a Rasengan. But instead of attacking with it, he compressed and modified the spiraling chakra until it emitted a counter-frequency. The distortion wavered around him, and then around Supergirl as he expanded the effect. The white-haired woman's expression shifted from triumph to disbelief. Impossible. The records said you couldn't counter-phase technology without preparation. The records were incomplete, Naruto replied, advancing toward her steadily. A safeguard against those who might misuse our knowledge. With a snarl of frustration, the woman drew another device, this one smaller but pulsing with ominous energy. Then the cleansing begins now. With or without you. She pressed a button, and the device emitted a high-pitched whine that rapidly increased in frequency. Even without technical knowledge of the specific device, Naruto recognized an overloading power core. The explosion would devastate several city blocks. Supergirl recovered from the phase disruption and moved with blinding speed, attempting to snatch the device, but the woman triggered a personal force field, another piece of modified Uzushio technology. You can't stop the cleansing. She laughed. In 30 seconds, this entire area will be reduced to ash. Naruto assessed the situation with calm precision. The force field would prevent physical intervention. The device was already past the point where it could be safely deactivated. Evacuation was impossible in the time remaining. He locked eyes with Supergirl. Contain me, he said simply. She frowned in confusion. What? Form a barrier with your body. Around me and the device. Now, understanding dawned in her eyes, followed by determination. As Naruto moved toward the woman and the device, Supergirl positioned herself, using her cape and body to create a containment barrier. The woman backed away in fear as Naruto approached, her force field no impediment to him as he simply phased through it using the same principle he'd employed to counter her disruptor. He grasped the overloading device, feeling its energy surging toward critical mass. Then he did something that hadn't been attempted in 3 millennia, he opened his chakra pathways fully, creating a controlled absorption field. The device's energy began flowing into him, his cells converting and storing the volatile power. Pain unlike anything he'd experienced coursed through him as his body struggled to contain energies it wasn't fully prepared to handle. His skin glowed from within, chakra pathways visible beneath the surface like rivers of light. He gritted his teeth, focusing on the technique with absolute concentration. Around them, Supergirl maintained her position, ready to contain the explosion if his attempt failed. She watched in awe. As Naruto's body literally absorbed the destructive energy, processing it through systems she couldn't comprehend. The device sputtered and died, its power core completely drained. Naruto stood trembling, his body radiating residual energy that had nowhere to go. His eyes met Supergirl's, conveying urgent warning. Up, he managed through clenched teeth. High as possible, now, she understood immediately, wrapping her arms around him and flying vertically at maximum speed. They broke through clouds, atmosphere thinning around them as they approached the edge of space. At the apex of their ascent, with the curve of the Earth visible below, Naruto finally released his control. Energy exploded outward from his body in a spectacular aurora-like display, harmlessly dissipating in the upper atmosphere. The release left him momentarily unconscious, going limp in Supergirl's arms as she held him securely, watching the beautiful aftermath of what would have been devastating destruction. "Who are you?" she whispered, studying his face as they floated at the edge of space. The question wasn't just about his name or origin, but about the nature of a being who could do what she'd just witnessed. As if in response to her unheard question, Naruto's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, he seemed disoriented, then awareness returned. He looked around, taking in their position high above the Earth. The spectacular view of the planet spread beneath them. "It's beautiful," he said softly. "From up here, it looks whole, unified." "It does," Supergirl agreed. "That's why I come up here sometimes. To remember what I'm protecting." Naruto nodded, understanding in his eyes. Then he glanced down at himself, noting the residual energy still coursing through his system. The absorption was imperfect. "My body is still adapting, remembering." "You absorbed enough energy to level half of downtown," Supergirl pointed out. "I'd say that's pretty impressive for someone who just woke up from a 3,000-year nap." A smile tugged at his lips. "When you put it that way." His expression sobered. "The woman, she called you Kryptonian, and she spoke of my people's prophecies." "Krypton was my homeworld," Supergirl confirmed. "It was destroyed. I'm one of the last survivors, along with my cousin, Superman. You might hear about him if you stick around." She paused. "And judging by what I just saw, you might be the last of your kind too." "Uzushio," Naruto supplied. "We were guardians, in our way. Keepers of knowledge and power that others weren't ready for." He looked toward the distant curve of the horizon. "Now I find that knowledge corrupted, used by those who don't understand its purpose." "The hand of fate?" Supergirl asked. Naruto nodded. "A splinter group, according to Hinata, the woman with the special eyes. They broke from those tasked with preserving Uzushio's legacy. They believe my purpose is destruction rather than protection." "And what do you believe your purpose is?" The question hung between them as they floated in the silence of near space. Naruto considered it carefully, memories of his parents' final words echoing in his mind. "To protect," he finally answered. "To preserve what's worth saving. To help this world avoid the mistakes that destroyed mine." He met her gaze directly. "And to stop anyone who would misuse the legacy of Uzushio." Supergirl studied him for a long moment, then nodded, seemingly satisfied with what she saw. "Well, Naruto Uzumaki, last sage of Uzushio, welcome to Earth." She gestured toward the planet below. "It's complicated, often frustrating, sometimes beautiful, and definitely worth protecting." "Sounds familiar," Naruto replied with a faint smile. "My world was much the same." They began descending back toward Metropolis, where emergency services had contained the bank fire and police had taken the white-haired woman into custody. As they approached, Naruto observed the city with fresh eyes, seeing not just the unfamiliar architecture and technology, but the people going about their lives despite the chaos of recent events. "They're resilient," he noted, "adapting even to the extraordinary. Humans are good at that." Supergirl agreed. "Better than my people were, in some ways. Better than most species have encountered." As they landed near the now secure scene, media had gathered in force. Cameras trained on them instantly. Hinata pushed through the crowd, relief evident on her face when she saw Naruto unharmed. "The woman we captured," she said without preamble. "She's from a sect called the Purifiers, extremists within the hand of fate who believe your return signals the end of the current world order." She won't be the last, Naruto observed grimly. No, Hinata agreed. But you don't have to face them alone. She glanced at Supergirl, then back to Naruto. The Hyuga compound has preparations for your return, secure facilities, records of Uzushio technology we've recovered over the centuries. Training areas designed to help you regain your full abilities. Supergirl stepped forward. The Fortress of Solitude also has resources that might help, especially for understanding how your powers interact with Earth's environment. My cousin would want to meet you. Naruto looked between them, then at the gathered media and curious onlookers. His awakening had irrevocably changed this world already. The existence of Uzushio and its technologies now public knowledge, his own abilities displayed for all to see. Whatever path he chose now would set the course for what followed. I need to understand this world before I can properly protect it, he decided. Learn its languages, cultures, politics. And I need to recover what was lost, not just my abilities, but the true purpose of Uzushio's legacy. Hinata nodded in understanding. Then you'll come with us. To the compound. For now, Naruto agreed. He turned to Supergirl. But I would like to learn more about Krypton as well. Perhaps our worlds had more in common than either of us knows. I'd like that, Supergirl replied with a genuine smile. And something tells me we're going to need each other in the days ahead. As if to punctuate her words, all three of their phones chimed simultaneously, Naruto having been given one by the research team earlier. They checked the screens to find breaking news alerts showing footage from their battle, with headlines proclaiming, "New superhuman emerges. Sage teams with Supergirl to save Metropolis." Accompanying the headline was an image of Naruto standing amid the chaos at the bank. His form glowing with chakra energy, the spiral symbol of Uzushio clearly visible on his chest. The world had indeed changed irrevocably with his awakening. Looks like you've made quite a first impression, Supergirl observed. Naruto studied the image thoughtfully. The Sage of Uzushio, he said, tasting the title the media had already begun using. A legacy reborn in a new world. As reporters surged forward, questions flying, Naruto stood tall beside his new allies. Whatever challenges this world held, whatever enemies sought to misuse his heritage or read in his new home, the last sage would face them with the determination and strength that had made him Uzushio's final hope. The prophecies had spoken of his return for millennia. Now those prophecies would be tested against reality, and Naruto Uzumaki intended to write his own destiny. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Powers and Purpose. Titanium-reinforced walls surrounded Naruto as he sat cross-legged in the center of what Star Labs euphemistically called an observation chamber. 3 days had passed since his dramatic emergence in Metropolis. 3 days of tests, questions, and careful observation by scientists who regarded him with a mixture of fascination and fear. He kept his eyes closed, focusing on the energy flowing through his body. Chakra pathways that had lain dormant for millennia were reawakening, reconnecting to cosmic energies in ways that even he didn't fully understand. The stasis pod had altered him during his long sleep, adapted his physiology to survive in this new world. Cellular mitosis has increased by another 17% since yesterday, a female voice noted clinically. And the energy absorption rate continues to accelerate. It's almost as if his body is remembering. Naruto opened his eyes, focusing on the pink-haired scientist who stood on the other side of reinforced glass, studying readings on a transparent display. Dr. Sakura Haruno, brilliant, skeptical, and refreshingly direct, had been assigned as his primary medical examiner. Not remembering, Naruto corrected, his voice carrying easily through the communication system. Evolving. The pod was designed to prepare me gradually. His command of English had improved rapidly, though certain idioms and cultural references still eluded him. Sakura looked up, green eyes sharp with intelligence. Prepare you for what, exactly? For this. He gestured around him. A world where I would be alone. Different. Something flickered across her expression, a momentary softening before her professional demeanor reasserted itself. The cellular adaptations we're seeing go far beyond mere survival mechanisms. Your body is actively restructuring itself to process solar radiation in a manner similar to Kryptonians. Yet your baseline physiology remains distinctly human. The sage bloodline was engineered to adapt, Naruto explained, rising to his feet with fluid grace. My ancestors modified themselves over many generations to harness both internal energy, chakra, and external cosmic forces. Self-directed evolution, Sakura murmured, making notes on her tablet. Fascinating in theory, but the practical applications would be dangerous, Naruto finished for her. Which is why Uzushio kept itself hidden for so long. Their conversation was interrupted as the laboratory door slid open. Dr. Emil Hamilton entered, accompanied by Hinata Hyuga and a woman Naruto hadn't met, tall, with striking features and an air of authority that suggested military training. Mr. Uzumaki, Hamilton began formally. This is Colonel Lauren Haley, Department of Extranormal Operations. She's here to discuss your status. Naruto inclined his head slightly, studying the newcomer. Her uniform bore no insignia he recognized, but the subtle reinforcement in her stance spoke of someone accustomed to dealing with enhanced individuals. The observation period is over, Colonel Haley stated without preamble. We're moving you to a more appropriate facility for further assessment. Sakura frowned. With respect, Colonel, we're in the middle of critical baseline analyses. Moving him now would compromise. This isn't a request, Doctor. Haley cut her off with practiced efficiency. The emergence of an unknown metahuman with abilities on par with Kryptonians represents a national security concern that supersedes scientific curiosity. Naruto listened to this exchange with outward calm, though inwardly he noted the power dynamics at play. This world organized itself differently than Uzushio had, but the fundamental patterns of authority, fear, and control remained unchanged across millennia. I am not a prisoner, he stated quietly, his voice somehow filling the room despite its soft delivery. Haley turned toward him, expression carefully neutral. No one said you were, Mr. Uzumaki. But surely you understand our position. An individual with your capabilities requires certain oversight. I understand fear, Naruto replied, moving toward the transparent barrier separating them. I understand the desire to control what you don't comprehend. My civilization made similar mistakes. Something in his tone made everyone in the room tense, a subtle reminder that the reinforced chamber around him was a courtesy he permitted, not a constraint that bound him. Hinata stepped forward, her diplomatic training evident as she positioned herself between the opposing parties. Perhaps we could discuss alternatives. The Hyuga compound has facilities designed specifically for sage physiology, with historical records that might accelerate our understanding. And conveniently place him under your clan's influence, Haley observed shrewdly. Before tension could escalate further, the laboratory's emergency system activated, lights shifting to amber as a priority alert sounded. Hamilton moved to the nearest console, expression growing grave as he read the incoming information. There's been an incident at the Metropolitan Museum, he reported. The Uzushio artifacts recovered from the excavation site were being prepared for analysis when something activated. What kind of something? Sakura asked sharply. Hamilton's response was cut short as the laboratory's power fluctuated, screens flickering momentarily before stabilizing. When they reactivated, a new face appeared on the main display, familiar enough to make Naruto's breath catch. Long red hair framed a face both beautiful and stern. Eyes that matched his own stared out from the screen, seeming to look directly at him despite the recording's ancient origin. Naruto. The woman spoke in the language of Uzushio, her voice clear despite millennia of separation. If this message has activated, you have awakened in a world far removed from our own. I am Kushina Uzumaki, your mother, and there is much you must know. The laboratory fell silent, all conflict temporarily forgotten as they witnessed this impossible communication from across time. Naruto stepped closer to the screen, one hand unconsciously reaching toward the image of his mother. The failsafe protocols embedded in your DNA have connected to this message, Kushina continued. Listen carefully, for what I tell you now is the truth that the elders concealed, even from most of our own people. The message shifted, displaying images of a shining civilization, crystalline towers rising toward 3 moons, technology seamlessly integrated with natural elements, people wielding powers that blended science and what this world would call magic. Uzushio was not merely an island nation, as our official histories claimed. We were survivors, refugees from a cosmic catastrophe that destroyed our original homeworld generations before your birth. Sakura glanced at Naruto, noting how still he had become, absorbing information that rewrote even what he had believed about himself. Our ancestors traveled through dimensional barriers, seeking a world compatible with our unique physiology. When they discovered this Earth, they found it rich in natural energies they called chakra, a force that resonated with our own biological systems. They established Uzushio in isolation, gradually adapting to harness both our inherited cosmic abilities and this world's native energies. The images shifted again, showing D.A. grams of DNA structures being modified over generations, the spiral symbol of Uzushio representing not just a national identity but a deliberate genetic program. The sage bloodline represents the culmination of this adaptation, individuals capable of channeling both cosmic radiation and chakra through specialized cellular structures. You, Naruto, carry the purest expression of this bloodline we have achieved. Hinata stepped closer to the glass, her Byakugan activating unconsciously as she witnessed confirmation of legends her family had preserved for centuries. But others learned of our powers, Kushina continued, her expression darkening. Those who called themselves the Uchiha, wielders of visual powers that could copy techniques without understanding their foundations. Their leader, Madara, became obsessed with obtaining the sage abilities for himself. The recording showed devastating warfare, techniques that warped reality itself, powers clashing in ways that shattered landscapes. We recognized too late that the conflict would destroy not just Uzushio but potentially the entire world. The elders enacted the preservation protocol, selecting you, our son, to carry our legacy into the future. The stasis chamber was designed not merely to preserve your life but to evolve your abilities, preparing you for a world we knew would be dramatically changed by our absence. Kushina's image leaned forward, seeming to look directly into Naruto's eyes across the vast gulf of time. The public records speak of prophecies about your return, that the last sage would either save his world or cleanse it for Uzushio's rebirth. These were fabrications, deliberate misleading narratives planted to confuse those who might misuse our knowledge. Your true purpose is simpler, and infinitely more complex. Live, Naruto. Find happiness in whatever world you awaken to. Protect what deserves protection. Build rather than destroy. The power you carry was never meant for conquest or cleansing, it was meant for creation. For healing, for balance. Tears streamed silently down Naruto's face as his mother's image smiled sadly. Your father has left separate messages with technological specifications and training protocols. I leave you with what matters more, our love, our hopes, our dreams for your future. You are the last sage, but you need not be the last Uzumaki. Find your own path, my son. The message flickered, Kushina's image beginning to fade. One final warning. Madara found ways to extend his life through forbidden techniques. If he survived the fall of Uzushio, he will sense your awakening and seek you out, not to welcome, but to harvest what you represent. Be vigilant, be wise, be the man we knew you could become. The screen went dark, leaving the laboratory in profound silence. Naruto stood motionless, processing revelations that transformed his understanding of his own existence. Not just the last survivor of an advanced civilization, but the inheritor of a legacy spanning multiple worlds. Multiple catastrophes. Sakura was the first to speak, her scientific mind already connecting implications. That explains the dual energy signatures in your cellular structure. You're processing both solar radiation and ambient chakra simultaneously. It also explains why your abilities differ from Kryptonian powers while sharing certain characteristics, Hamilton added. Excitement overriding protocol as his scientific curiosity engaged. Your people might have originated from a similar stellar environment but evolved differently after arriving on Earth. Colonel Haley remained pragmatic. If this Madara person survived as the message suggests, we need to consider the security implications immediately. Throughout this exchange, Hinata watched Naruto, recognizing the emotional impact behind his controlled exterior. She moved to the chamber door, opening it despite Haley's protest. He needs space, she said firmly, surprising everyone with her assertiveness. Not more analysis. Naruto acknowledged her understanding with a slight nod, moving past the assembled officials and scientists into the corridor beyond. No one moved to stop him, Perhaps recognizing the futility of attempting to contain someone of his abilities, or perhaps simply respecting the human moment of a man processing his identity. Hinata followed him to an observation deck overlooking the metropolis skyline, maintaining a respectful distance as he gathered his thoughts. The setting sun painted the city in hues of amber and gold, glittering off buildings that, for all their impressiveness, paled against his memories of Uzushio's crystal spires. My clan's scrolls told of Uzushio's fall, Hinata said quietly, breaking the silence. But even our most detailed records never mentioned an origin beyond Earth. Perhaps they didn't know, Naruto suggested, his voice steady despite the emotion still evident in his eyes. My mother implied the truth was kept even from most of our own people. Hinata nodded, considering this. The oldest texts describe the sage abilities as gifts from beyond the three moons. We interpreted it as mystical language, but it was literal. Your ancestors came from another world entirely. A world that died, like Krypton. Naruto turned toward her, his expression thoughtful. Two civilizations, fleeing destruction, finding refuge on the same planet generations apart. It cannot be coincidence. The universe often creates patterns we only recognize in retrospect, Hinata observed. Her formal speech patterns had relaxed somewhat in his presence, though her natural reserve remained. What will you do with this knowledge? Naruto considered the question, watching as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Honor it, not by seeking to resurrect what was lost, but by protecting what now exists. His hands unclenched, a deliberate relaxation of tension. My mother was right, Uzushio is gone. My purpose must lie in the present, not the past. The moment was interrupted by the arrival of Sakura, tablet in hand as she approached with brisk professionalism. The museum incident has escalated, she reported. Whatever activated your mother's message also triggered other artifacts. We're receiving reports of unusual energy signatures at multiple sites where Uzushio technology was taken for study. Naruto straightened, his brief period of reflection set aside as he focused on immediate concerns. What kind of energy signatures? Quantum fluctuations consistent with dimensional breaching, Sakura replied, displaying data streams that meant little to Hinata but clearly concerned both scientist and sage. Similar to readings recorded during your awakening, but more localized and growing in intensity. The preservation protocol, Naruto murmured, it wasn't just about me. The elders must have hidden other technologies throughout the world, safeguards or resources intended to activate upon my return. Or weapons, Sakura added pragmatically. We should. The building shuddered suddenly, a deep vibration passing through its structure. Alarms activated throughout the facility as Hamilton's voice came over the communication system. Unidentified aerial object approaching STAR. Labs. All personnel initiate security protocol THETA-3. Naruto moved to the observation window, enhanced vision, piercing the gathering darkness to identify the approaching threat. What he saw defied easy classification. Neither aircraft nor living creature in conventional terms, but a swirling vortex of energy that seemed to bend light around it, maintaining a roughly circular form as it descended toward the building. Dimensional anchor, he identified, ancient training surfacing through muscle memory. Uzushio technology designed to stabilize connections between realms. Between realms, Sakura questioned sharply. You mean it's opening a portal? Before Naruto could respond, the vortex expanded dramatically, its center hollowing into a tunnel of swirling energy. From within this impossible aperture emerged a figure, humanoid but indistinct, as though not fully materialized in this dimension. The building's security systems activated automatically, energy barriers forming around the laboratory complex. The ghostly figure passed through them as though they didn't exist, moving with singular purpose toward the facility. It's coming for me, Naruto realized. Not a threat, but a summons. The protocol is trying to reconnect dispersed elements. Hinata's Byakugan activated, veins bulging around her eyes as she peered into the dimensional anomaly. I see patterns, like chakra pathways, but structured differently. It's a construct, not a living being. I need to meet it, Naruto decided. If my parents left additional messages or resources, this may be how they're delivered. Sakura looked skeptical. Or it could be a trap. Your mother warned about Madara possibly surviving, had if he's co-opted the protocol for his own purposes. It was a valid concern, but Naruto's instincts, honed through training and genetic memory, suggested otherwise. The construct's energy signature resonated with his own in a way that felt familiar, safe. "I'll intercept it away from the building," he compromised. "If it proves dangerous, better to confront it without risking others." Before either woman could protest, Naruto leapt from the observation deck, channeling chakra to propel himself upward toward the hovering vortex. His body sliced through the evening air with precision, the distinctive gold glow of his awakening powers forming an aura around him. As he approached the anomaly, its swirling energies reacted to his presence, colors shifting from ominous purple to a calmer blue that matched his eyes. The semi-materialized figure extended an arm in greeting or beckoning. Naruto hovered before it, chakra keeping him aloft as he studied the construct more closely. It bore a distinctive spiral pattern of Uzushio across what might be considered its chest, and its form seemed deliberately designed to resemble a sage in traditional armor. "I am Naruto Uzumaki," he stated in the ancient tongue. "Last sage of Uzushio. What message do you bring?" The construct's form rippled, and then a voice emerged, not his mother's this time, but deeper, resonant with authority and something he recognized instinctively as kinship. "My son," spoke Minato Uzumaki, fourth high sage of Uzushio, across 3 millennia of silence. "The beacon has registered your awakening. Follow the anchor to receive your inheritance." The vortex expanded further, its center becoming a window into somewhere else, not the destroyed Uzushio of the past, but a space that existed outside conventional dimensions. Preserved intact despite the passage of time. Naruto hesitated, glancing back at the STAR Labs facility where Sakura and Hinata watched with evident concern. Military helicopters were approaching in the distance. No doubt scrambled in response to the dimensional anomaly. A choice presented itself: retreat to the safety of established protocols and scientific observation, or Embra. The unknown legacy his parents had preserved for him. The decision, when it came, felt inevitable. Naruto turned back to the portal and, with a final gathering of resolve, propelled himself forward into the swirling energy. The vortex contracted immediately after he passed through, collapsing into a pinpoint of light before vanishing entirely, leaving military response teams and worried scientists staring at empty air where dimensional physics had briefly bent to ancestral will. On the other side of the portal, Naruto found himself in a space that defied conventional description, not a physical location, but a construct of pure information given form through advanced technology. Crystalline structures surrounded him, each containing what appeared to be living images, moments of Uzushio preserved like insects in amber. Before him stood the fully realized image of his father, tall, with the same blonde hair but sharper features, wearing the ceremonial armor of the High Sage. Logically Naruto understood this was merely a sophisticated recording. The presence felt so real that emotions threatened to overwhelm his careful composure. "The transition disorientation will pass momentarily," Minato's image said, gesturing to a central crystal dais. "This archive exists in a pocket dimension, accessible only to those carrying our bloodline markers. Here, time passes differ. What might seem like hours within will translate to moments in your world." As promised, the initial disorientation faded, allowing Naruto to focus more clearly on his surroundings. The archive, as his father called it, contained what appeared to be the distilled knowledge of Uzushio, preserved in crystal data structures his people had perfected centuries before their fall. "I have many questions," Naruto began, struggling to prioritize among the countless uncertainties that had plagued him since awakening. Minato nodded, his expression reflecting understanding. "And I have left answers where possible. Though some questions have no resolution, even for those of us who lived through Uzushio's final days." He gestured, and the space around them transformed, becoming a perfect recreation of the High Council chambers where the sage leadership had once governed. "Let us begin with what matters most, your abilities. The stasis chamber was designed to gradually adapt your physiology, preparing you for this world while preserving the core of what makes you Uzumaki. Those adaptations are still ongoing. Your full capabilities will continue to manifest over approximately 1 solar year." Images appeared around them, detailed anatomical displays showing Naruto's unique cellular structure, the specialized pathways that channeled both chakra and cosmic energy, the genetic modifications that allowed his body to process solar radiation in ways similar to but distinct from Kryptonian physiology. Your primary abilities include accelerated healing, enhanced strength and speed, sensory perception beyond normal human ranges, and natural chakra manipulation. Minato's image walked around the floating displays, highlighting specific systems. Unlike most humans of your time, you can access and direct chakra without extensive training. It responds instinctively to your will. I've noticed, Naruto confirmed, recalling how naturally certain techniques had come to him during moments of stress, despite centuries of dormancy. But my control is inconsistent. Sometimes the power flows easily, other times it feels blocked. Neural pathway reconstruction, Minato explained. Your brain is re-establishing connections between intent and execution. The physical capability exists, but the control mechanisms require recalibration through practice. He gestured again, and a new series of images appeared, training sequences designed to accelerate this recalibration. These exercises will help stabilize your abilities. Begin with the fundamental chakra control techniques, then progress to more advanced applications once those are mastered. Naruto absorbed the information eagerly, recognizing elements of training he had begun before the fall but never completed. What about the visual abilities? The energy projection I've manifested unconsciously. Adaptations based on solar radiation processing, Minato confirmed. Not traditional Uzushio abilities, but enhancements designed specifically for your survival in a post-catastrophe environment. Your cellular structure absorbs and converts solar energy more efficiently than our ancestors, allowing for external projection rather than purely internal use. This explained the similarities to Kryptonian abilities, not identical genetics, but parallel evolutionary adaptations to similar stellar conditions. Naruto found himself wondering how much his father had known about Krypton, whether the two civilizations had ever encountered one another before their respective falls. As if reading his thoughts, Minato continued. During our dimensional transit generations ago, our ancestors encountered evidence of other advanced civilizations seeking refuge from dying worlds. We believe the multiverse contains numerous parallel evolution paths, species who developed similar adaptations to similar environments. Like Krypton, Naruto suggested. Minato's image showed recognition. Yes, our records indicated a planet orbiting a red giant star, whose inhabitants had developed remarkable abilities related to stellar radiation processing. We never established direct contact, but observed them from dimensional adjacency. During our search for a suitable refuge world, this connection between his heritage and Supergirl's fascinated Naruto. Two civilizations, advanced beyond Earth's current technology, both destroyed by catastrophe. Both sending survivors to the same planet. The cosmic coincidence seemed too precise to be random chance. There is another matter we must address, Minato continued, his expression growing grave. The threat that destroyed Uzushio. Our official histories blamed natural disaster, dimensional instability causing catastrophic energy discharge. This was partially true, but deliberately incomplete. The chamber around them shifted again, now showing scenes of conflict. Uzushio's crystal spires under attack not from natural forces but from organized assault. Warriors wielding visual powers that glowed red in the darkness, copying and reflecting the very techniques Uzushio's defenders deployed against them. Madara Uchiha, Naruto identified, recalling his mother's warning. She said he sought our abilities for himself. Quote, Minato nodded solemnly. The Uchiha clan possessed a unique genetic trait, eyes that could analyze and replicate techniques after merely observing them. Where our powers came from generations of careful genetic refinement, theirs allowed shortcuts, imperfect but effective copying of abilities without understanding their foundations. Madara became obsessed with obtaining sage capabilities, particularly the dimensional manipulation aspects that allowed our ancestors to traverse between worlds. He believed these powers could grant him effective immortality, moving between realities whenever age or enemies threatened him. The images showed brutal warfare, techniques of terrifying power deployed by both sides. Uzushio's defenders fought with precision and coordination, but the Uchiha forces countered with stolen techniques and unexpected adaptations. When Madara realized he could not defeat us conventionally, he employed a forbidden technique, c. Hakra virus designed to corrupt our dimensional anchors from within. The resulting cascade failure didn't just destroy physical structures, it destabilized the dimensional boundaries around Uzushio itself. Naruto watched in horror as the recordings showed his homeland literally tearing apart. Not just buildings collapsing but reality itself fracturing, portions of the island nation seeming to exceed in multiple states simultaneously before imploding into nothingness. The dimensional collapse killed most of our people instantly, Minato continued, his voice somber despite being merely a recording. Those who survived the initial catastrophe were hunted by Madara's followers in the aftermath. We had mere hours to implement the preservation protocol before they reached the inner sanctum. And Madara himself, Naruto asked, though he suspected the answer from his mother's warning. Escaped the collapse, Minato confirmed grimly. His last known action was an attempt to absorb the dimensional energies released by Uzushio's destruction, a technique that should have destroyed him utterly, but apparently did not. If he survived, he would have gained abilities far beyond even his previous power. The implications were staggering. A being of already formidable power, enhanced by stolen sage techniques and dimensional energy absorption, potentially still active in this world after 3 millennia. No wonder his mother had warned of Madara seeking him out. Naruto represented both the legitimate heir to the powers Madara coveted and potentially the only being capable of opposing him. How would I recognize him after so long? Naruto asked practically. Even with extended lifespan techniques, no human could survive thousands of years without significant transformation. The UCHIHA visual traits are genetically distinctive and would persist through any transformation, Minato explained. Red irises with unique tomo patterns that rotate when active. Additionally, his chakra signature would carry dimensional distortion markers, perceivable to your senses once they've fully reactivated. Naruto absorbed this information, adding it to the growing mental catalog of threats and responsibilities his awakening had thrust upon him. Yet even amid these weighty revelations, a more personal question pressed forward. The stasis chamber, he said carefully. It preserved me, but not you or mother. Was there truly no alternative? Could you not have? He couldn't finish the question, but Minato understood nonetheless. The image of his father smiled sadly, an expression so human that Naruto had to remind himself this was merely a sophisticated recording, not truly his parent. The preservation chamber required tremendous energy to initialize, energy we could generate ONLY by sacrificing ourselves through the twin soul technique. Minato's image flickered briefly, revealing the immense complexity of the program maintaining this simulacrum. Your mother and I made our choice willingly, Naruto. We gave our lives so that you might carry something of Uzushio into the future. Not just genetic material or technical knowledge, but the values and spirit that made our civilization worthy of remembrance. Naruto bowed his head, accepting the explanation while still processing the emotional impact of knowing his parents had literally converted their life energy into power that had preserved him through millennia. There isn't much time remaining before the archive must return you, Minato continued, gesturing to where the edges of the pocket dimension were already showing signs of instability. The energy requirements for maintaining this space grow exponentially with use. Before you depart, place your hand on the central crystal. It contains technical specifications for reconstructing certain Uzushio technologies, ones chosen specifically for their potential to benefit your new world without destabilizing its development. Naruto moved to the indicated crystal, placing his palm against its cool surface. Information flooded into him, not simply intellectual knowledge but muscle memory, technical understanding that integrated directly with his neural pathways. Designs for medical technologies, sustainable energy systems, environmental restoration techniques, carefully selected innovations that represented Uzushio's highest achievements without the potentially destructive applications that had contributed to its downfall. One final matter, Minato said as the transfer completed. The preservation protocol included contingency measures, Sekonda. Stasis chambers containing others of strong Uzumaki bloodline. Not sages, but individuals with significant potential. They were dispersed globally, programmed to activate only if your emergence proved successful and the world suitable for their awakening. This revelation sent shock through Naruto's system. I'm not the last. There are other survivors. Potential survivors, Minato corrected. The chambers were experimental, using less stable technology than your own. We calculated approximately 63% probability of successful preservation. If they survived, they would be awakening now, scattered across this world, confused and vulnerable. How many? Naruto demanded, the implications multiplying in his mind. 7 chambers. 7 chances for our bloodline to continue beyond you alone. Minato's image began to fade as the pocket dimension reached its stability limits. Find them, Naruto. Protect them. They are your family, the future of Uzushio, not as an isolate D-nation but as a thread woven into the tapestry of this new world. The archive shimmered around them, crystal structures beginning to dissolve as the dimensional boundaries reasserted themselves. Minato's image reached out, one hand almost, but not quite, touching Naruto's face in a gesture of farewell. We are proud of you, my son. Not for what you were, or what you might become, but for who you are at your core. Trust that essence, it will guide you when all other certainties fail. The image of his father faded completely, the archive collapsing around Naruto in a cascade of dissolving light. He felt himself falling through layers of reality, consciousness stretched thin across dimensional barriers before snapping back into conventional space-time with disorienting suddenness. Naruto materialized in midair above St.A.R. Labs, the dimensional portal closing behind him with a thunderclap of displaced air. For a moment he hovered, supported by instinctive chakra control, as his senses reoriented to physical reality. The transition from the archive's information-dense environment to normal perception left him momentarily overwhelmed, every sight and sound and sensation intensified beyond comfort. Then a familiar presence approached, a distinctive energy signature he'd encountered only recently but already recognized. Supergirl flew toward him, cape billowing behind her. As she navigated the night sky with practiced ease. Naruto, she called, maintaining a respectful distance. Are you all right? The portal appeared and disappeared so quickly, everyone's been worried. He blinked, processing her words through the lingering disorientation. How long was I gone? About 3 minutes, she replied, surprise evident in her voice. It felt longer to you. Hours, he confirmed, the dimensional time dilation his father had mentioned manifesting exactly as predicted. I was speaking with my father, or his recorded consciousness, preserved across time. Supergirl's expression reflected understanding beyond what most would comprehend. I've had similar experiences at the fortress. Technology that preserves not just information but something of the personality behind it. She hovered closer, studying him with concern. You look overwhelmed. I am, Naruto admitted, finding it surprisingly easy to acknowledge vulnerability to her. Perhaps because she too knew what it meant to carry the legacy of a lost civilization. I learned things about my origins, my powers, and potential threats seeking to exploit both. A flicker of movement caught his attention. Military helicopters approaching from multiple directions, no doubt responding to the dimensional anomaly. On the ground below, STAR. Lab's security had established a perimeter, scientific equipment deployed to analyze the event. They'll have questions, Supergirl observed, following his gaze. Lots of them. Questions I'm not prepared to answer fully, Naruto replied. The information he'd received in the archive represented potential power too significant to surrender to authorities who might misuse it, whether through good intentions or otherwise. Supergirl seemed to understand his hesitation. I could create a distraction. Give you time to process what you've learned before facing an interrogation. The offer was tempting, yet Naruto recognized that flight now would only intensify suspicion and potentially endanger the very people, Hinata, Sakura, Hamilton, who had shown him consideration since his awakening. No, he decided, I'll face their questions, but selectively. She nodded, respecting his choice. Then I'll stay, if you don't mind. Sometimes having another non-human in the room helps keep the conversation civilized. They descended together toward the facility's roof, where Hinata waited with barely concealed relief evident in her expression. Beside her stood Sakura, tablet in hand, already recording readings from Naruto's return. The dimensional breach collapsed completely. Sakura reported as they landed. But we detected 7 smaller energy spikes globally in its immediate aftermath. Related phenomena. Naruto exchanged a glance with Supergirl. impressed by the scientist's perceptiveness. Yes, potential survivors of Uzushio, in secondary preservation chambers. If the readings are accurate, they're awakening now. This information visibly startled both women. Hinata recovered first, implications immediately apparent to her through family knowledge. The sevenfold dispersion, she murmured. Our records mentioned it as theoretical, a contingency never confirmed. My father's message confirmed it, Naruto explained. Though he warned the technology was experimental. Some may not have survived. We need to locate them immediately, Sakura stated. Already inputting commands to track the energy signatures. If they're disoriented like you were upon awakening, they could be in danger, or pose unintentional danger to others. C. Olonal Haley chose that moment to arrive with a contingent of Deo agents, her expression making it clear she considered the situation firmly under her jurisdiction now. Mr. Uzumaki, she began formally. You are hereby required to submit to full debriefing regarding this incident. The dimensional breach triggered global security protocols. Before tension could escalate, Supergirl stepped forward. Colonel, I understand your concerns. But consider that we're potentially dealing with multiple disoriented refugees from an ancient civilization. Aggressive approach could create precisely the crisis situation you're hoping to prevent. Quote, Haley's gaze shifted between them, calculating. What do you propose instead? Collaboration, Naruto suggested, choosing his words carefully. I've received technical knowledge that could benefit this world, medical technologies, sustainable energy systems. I'm willing to share these advances in exchange for assistance locating and securing the other survivors before those who destroyed Uzushio can reach them. The mention of advanced technology visibly impacted Haley's assessment, exactly as Naruto had anticipated. Military strategy transcended Tim. The promise of technological advantage often outweighed other considerations. What destroyed Uzushio? She asked directly, focusing on the implicit threat. His name is Madara Uchiha, Naruto answered truthfully, though selectively. A being who coveted our abilities and ultimately caused our civilization's destruction. My mother's warning suggested he may have survived to this era through dimensional manipulation techniques. This information shifted the dynamic further, from containing a potential threat, Naruto, to addressing a confirmed hostile with apocalyptic capabilities. Strategic pragmatism began to override institutional caution. I'll need to consult with my superiors, Haley said finally. In the meantime, I'm authorizing a joint task force to locate these other survivors. Dr. Haruno, your expertise with Mr. Uzumaki's physiology makes you the logical scientific lead. Miss Hyuga, your historical knowledge remains valuable. She turned to Supergirl, professional respect. Evident despite obvious jurisdiction tensions. And I assume you'll be participating regardless of official sanction. Supergirl smiled diplomatically. Let's say I have a personal interest in helping refugees adjust to Earth. Throughout this exchange, Naruto observed the power dynamics with keen attention. This world operated through complex bureaucratic structures unlike Uzushio's more centralized governance. Navigating these structures would require adaptation beyond mere physical capabilities, cultural and political fluency he had yet to fully develop. The first priority should be the survivor in North Africa. Sakura interjected, displaying a global map with energy signature locations. That reading is already destabilizing, suggesting either difficulty in the awakening process or external interference. I can reach Morocco fastest, Supergirl offered. But I don't have Naruto's connection to Uzushio technology. We should work as a team. Naruto nodded in agreement, already calculating optimal approach. We'll need transportation for the others. And communication systems compatible with our movements. STAR. Labs can provide specialized equipment, Sakura offered. I've been developing adaptable communications based on studies of your physiology. Plans coalesced rapidly, professional expertise merging with Naruto's strategic training and Hinata's historical knowledge. Within 30 minutes, a provisional team had formed. Naruto and Supergirl as primary field operatives, Sakura providing scientific support, Hinata offering cultural and historical context. With Deo resources backing their efforts. As preparations continued around him, Naruto found a moment to step away, processing the cascade of revelations and responsibilities that had transformed his understanding within hours of receiving his father's message. The weight of legacy pressed upon him, not just the technical knowledge transferred through the archive, but the moral imperative his parents had emphasized above all else. Live. Find happiness. Protect what deserves protection. Build rather than destroy. Asterisk. Simple directives that encompassed infinite complexity in execution. Special. Why with the added dimension of 7 potential survivors, each carrying fragments of Uzushio's genetic heritage if not its complete knowledge. Family. The concept resonated strangely after millennia of isolation. Even if that isolation had been unconscious within the stasis chamber, the possibility of connection to others who shared his bloodline, who might understand aspects of his experience without explanation, awakened emotions he had carefully contained since his emergence into this new world. Deep thoughts. Supergirl's voice broke through his contemplation as she joined him at the edge of the roof. Respecting his space while offering companionship. Many, he acknowledged. My father's message changed everything. Again, she nodded understanding. I remember when I first accessed my parents' recordings at the fortress. Hearing their voices, seeing their faces, it made Krypton real again in ways memory alone couldn't maintain. Did they leave you directives? Naruto asked. Expectations for your life on Earth. Supergirl considered this, gazing toward the stars barely visible through Metropolis's light pollution. Hope, she finally answered. They wanted me to preserve hope. For myself, for my cousin. For the legacy of our house. Not specific actions, but a guiding principle. My parents spoke of balance, Naruto shared. Creation rather than destruction. Building rather than conquering. He turned toward her, blue eyes meeting blue in the dim light. Yet they also warned of threats that might necessitate conflict. How do you reconcile protection with peace? Power with restraint? It was a question that transcended their unique circumstances, one that every being of exceptional ability faced, regardless of origin. Supergirl's expression suggested she had wrestled with similar contradictions. Imperfectly, she admitted with refreshing honesty. Every day requires new calculations, new judgments. The balance isn't fixed. It shifts with circumstances, with understanding, with relationships. Relationships, Naruto repeated, finding unexpected resonance in the concept. My people valued connection, believed true strength emerged from bonds between individuals, not just personal power. Mine too, Supergirl replied, a warm smile transforming her features. For all their technological advancement, Kryptonians structured their society around family units, the houses that formed our foundation for millennia. This shared value bridged the vast differences between their lost civilizations, a common thread woven through otherwise divergent cultural fabrics. Naruto found himself appreciating the unexpected harmony, another piece of connection in a world where he had anticipated only isolation. Their moment of understanding was interrupted as Sakura approached. Her professional demeanor softened slightly by evident excitement. We've established preliminary remote contact with the Moroccan site, she reported. There's definitely something there, an energy signature matching your own, though fluctuating unstably. Transport is ready whenever you are. Reality reasserted itself, the immediate mission taking priority over philosophical contemplation. Yet as they moved toward the waiting aircraft, Naruto found himself valuing the brief connection with someone who understood his unique perspective, a foundation for trust essential to effective partnership. The aircraft Sakura indicated was unlike standard military designs, sleeker, with technological modifications that suggested STAR Labs' influence. Inside, equipment had been NGED to monitor global energy signatures while maintaining secure communications with the DAO headquarters. Hinata was already aboard, reviewing historical documents on a tablet while occasionally activating her Byakugan to examine the specialized equipment. She looked up as they entered, her expression revealing momentary concern before professional composure reasserted itself. The Moroccan Te corresponds with historical records of an Uzushio outpost, she informed them, displaying ancient maps alongside modern satellite imagery. My clan's archives suggest it housed a research facility, focused on medical applications of chakra technology. Appropriate location for a preservation chamber, Naruto noted, examining the geographical data. Remote yet accessible, geologically stable, natural energy convergence beneficial to long-term stasis maintenance. As the team settled into their roles, Naruto felt a strange sense of rightness, not just purpose, but belonging. These individuals had no obligation to help him. Yet here they were, committing their unique skills to a mission whose importance they couldn't fully comprehend but accepted on faith. Perhaps this was what his mother had meant about finding his path in this new world. Not isolation as the last sage, but integration, bringing what remained of Uzushio into harmony with Earth's existing structures, creating something neither could achieve alone. The aircraft lifted off, banking toward the Atlantic as dawn began breaking over Metropolis. Below, the city glittered with millions of lights, millions of lives continuing in their ordinary patterns. Unaware of dimensional anomalies, ancient threats, or awakening powers that might soon impact their existence. Protect what deserves protection, his mother had directed. Looking down at the sprawling human achievement beneath them, Naruto felt the directive crystallize into certainty. This world, for all its flaws and complexities, deserved his protection, not as a god or savior, but as a participant in its ongoing evolution. The first test of that commitment awaited in Morocco, a potential family member emerging into bewildering circumstances after millennia of suspended animation. The challenges ahead would require all his developing abilities, both physical and diplomatic. As the aircraft accelerated to cruising speed, Naruto turned from the window to find Supergirl watching him with a knowing expression, one survivor of catastrophe recognizing the complex emotions in another. She offered a smile of solidarity without needing words. He returned it, grateful for the understanding. Whatever lay ahead, he would not face it alone. In this strange new world, bonds were forming, connections that might eventually replace what had been lost with something equally valuable. If fundamentally different, the last sage was finding his purpose. Miles beneath the Atlantic Ocean, in a facility whose existence appeared on no official records, Lex Luthor studied monitoring screens with intense concentration. Real-time data streamed from concealed sensors throughout Metropolis, capturing energy signatures, communication patterns, and movement racking for specific individuals of interest. Particular attention focused on STAR labs and the distinctive energy patterns that had emanated from the dimensional anomaly hours earlier. Sophisticated analytics compared these readings against historical baselines, identifying similarities and divergences from known metahuman signatures. Fascinating, he murmured, manipulating three-dimensional models of cellular structures displaying both Kryptonian patterns and the newly documented Uzumaki variants. Parallel evolutionary paths achieving similar results through fundamentally different mechanisms. Dr. Mercy Graves, his chief research director, observed with clinical detachment. The chakra pathways appear to serve similar functions to Kryptonian solar energy absorption systems, but with greater adaptability. Their integration with conventional human biology suggests deliberate engineering rather than natural evolution. Of course it was engineered, Luthor replied, expanding a particular section of the molecular model. The spiral patterns in the DNA sequencing are too precise for random mutation. Someone designed these adaptations thousands of years before Earth developed even basic genetic theory. He rotated the display, highlighting comparison points between standard human DNA, Kryptonian variants, and the newly designated SAGE pattern found in Naruto's cellular structure. Where Kryptonian biology showed distinct alien organization, the SAGE pattern represented something more disturbing: human genetics deliberately modified toward superhuman capability. The implications are revolutionary, Luthor continued, his brilliant mind already calculating applications and threats in equal measure. If one ancient civilization achieved this level of genetic self-modification, others may have as well. The metahuman explosion we're witnessing might not be random mutation but activated dormant programming from multiple sources. Graves remained pragmatic. The immediate concern is containment. This Naruto individual has already demonstrated abilities comparable to Kryptonians, but with additional manipulative capacities our countermeasures aren't designed to address. And now we have 7 more potential specimens emerging globally, Luthor added, displaying the energy signature map his systems had intercepted from STAR Labs communications. AAS. Significant escalation in both opportunity and threat profile. He expanded the Moroccan signature, studying its fluctuation patterns with particular interest. This one's unstable, preservation systems failing during emergency reactivation. They'll lose the subject without intervention. Our Casablanca facility could deploy within the hour, Graves suggested. Extraction before the DEO team arrives. Luther considered this, weighing variables with characteristic precision. No, let them stabilize the subject first. Our intelligence suggests these preservation chambers require specific genetic IC resonance for safe extraction. Attempting removal without proper protocols could destroy exactly what makes the specimen valuable. His attention shifted to another screen, where facial recognition software tracked Supergirl's movements alongside Naruto. Their interaction patterns demonstrated already developing rapport, concerning from strategic perspective but informative regarding psychological profiles. The Kryptonian has formed an alliance with him, Luther observed. Predictable. Shared trauma creating artificial kinship despite their distinct origins. This complicates direct acquisition approaches. The secondary subjects might prove more accessible, Graves noted, particularly those awakening in regions with limited metahuman response infrastructure. Luther nodded agreement, already adjusting deployment plans for assets in key regions. Prioritize the South American and Siberian signatures. Our presence in those regions is established enough to facilitate quiet extraction. He paused, attention returning to Naruto's cellular structure display. However, the primary subject remains most valuable, not just for his fully developed abilities, but for the comprehensive knowledge he possesses. The others are likely subordinate preservation cases, carrying genetic material but limited technical information. Direct confrontation would be ill-advised given demonstrated capabilities, Graves cautioned. Luther's expression shifted to one of calculated patience. There are other approaches. Every being has vulnerabilities, physical, psychological, emotional. Our new sage has been awake less than a week. He's forming attachments, creating potential leverage points. The display shifted to show Hinata Hyuga and Sakura Haruno, both now designated as primary monitory targets based on interaction patterns. These two in particular demonstrate potential value as influence vectors. The Hyuga clan's historical connection to Uzushio makes the female heir a natural ally from his perspective, while the scientist's involvement in his medical assessment has established regular contact patterns. Psychological profile suggests protective impulses toward perceived non-combatants, Graves noted. Reviewing behavioral analysis from Naruto's public interactions. Similar to Superman's documented weaknesses, but potentially more pronounced due to cultural factors. Luther's expression remained neutral, though a certain satisfaction glinted in his eyes. Every power has its counterbalance. Every strength creates corresponding vulnerability. He manipulated the display again, bringing up designs for a device incorporating elements of both conventional and theoretical physics. Continue development of the chakra disruption prototype. If this Uzushio technology functions as our analyses suggest, conventional countermeasures designed for metahumans or Kryptonians will prove insufficient. As Graves departed to implement his directives, Luther remained studying the cellular comparison displays, mind calculating possibilities that extended far beyond immediate strategic concerns. The appearance of Uzushio technology represented something beyond merely Anyo Thayer superhuman to contain or exploit. It suggested a fundamental recontextualization of human potential itself. If one ancient civilization had achieved such deliberate self-evolution, the implicatio NS for humanity's future development were staggering. And if their techniques could be reverse-engineered, applied with modern precision rather than ancient approximation. The next evolution, Luther murmured to the empty laboratory, fingers tracing the spiral pattern that defined Naruto's unique genetic structure. Not alien imposition, but human transcendence. The true value of the last sage might not be his power or knowledge, but the blueprint he represented, a path toward human advancement without dependence on alien benefactors or random genetic lottery. Directed evolution under conscious control. Luther smiled thinly, already envisioning applications beyond what even Uzushio's advanced civilization had attempted. They had created sages, he would create gods. But first, he needed their secrets. The Moroccan desert stretched beneath them, ancient sand dunes catching the morning light in patterns that had remained unchanged for millennia. Their aircraft approached coordinates corresponding to the unstable energy signature, the barren landscape revealing no obvious signs of civilization, precisely as Uzushio's architects would have intended. We're registering increasing signal volatility, Sakura reported, monitoring equipment displaying alarming fluctuation patterns. Whatever's down there is becoming critically unstable. Naruto studied the readouts, zing patterns similar to preservation chamber diagnostics he'd reviewed in the archive. The stasis field is collapsing prematurely. Without proper shutdown sequencing, the occupant could suffer cellular degradation during emergence. Can you stabilize it? Hinata asked. Byakugan activated as she scanned the desert below for signs invisible to normal perception. Not remotely, Naruto replied. Already moving toward the aircraft's exit hatch. I need direct contact with the chamber's control interfaces. He turned to Supergirl. We need to locate the exact position quickly. Can your vision penetrate the sand? She nodded, eyes already scanning the terrain with supernatural perception. There's something about 30 meters down. Crystalline structure similar to what I saw in your stasis chamber, but smaller. And it's pulsing somehow. Unstable energy patterns. That's our target, Naruto confirmed. We need to reach it immediately. The pilot began descent procedures, but Naruto recognized the time constraints made conventional approach impractical. He exchanged glances with Supergirl, communicating without words the necessity for more direct intervention. We'll proceed ahead, Supergirl informed the others. Follow with the medical equipment as quickly as possible. Without waiting for formal authorization, she opened the exit hatch, wind rushing into the cabin as the desert stretched below them. Naruto moved beside her, chakra already forming supportive patterns around his body in preparation for rapid descent. Ready? She asked, a hint of challenge in her expression. Naruto responded with a subtle smile, the first genuine one she'd seen from him. Try to keep up. He leapt from the aircraft, channeling chakra to control his fall while accelerating toward the surface. Supergirl matched his trajectory, flying parallel as they descended toward coordinates she had identified. The sensation of free fall awakened something primal in Naruto, muscle memory Fr. Own training exercises conducted in Uzushio's variable gravity chambers, where sage candidates had learned to manipulate their own relationship with physical forces. They landed simultaneously on the desert surface, sand displacing in a circular pattern around their point of impact. Without pause, Naruto knelt and placed his palms against the ground, sending chakra pulses deep into the earth to confirm the chamber's exact location and status. It's worse than we thought, he reported grimly. The occupant's life signs are fading. The chamber wasn't designed for extended preservation like mine. Its systems are reaching critical failure. How do we reach it? Supergirl asked, already assessing options. Naruto formed a sequence of hand seals, channeling chakra into precise configuration. Earth-style tunneling technique. The ground before them separated in controlled fashion, sand and stone moving aside to create a spiraling passage leading downward. Unlike crude excavation, the HNIQUE preserved structural integrity while establishing direct access to the buried chamber. They descended rapidly, Supergirl flying ahead to illuminate the passage with her natural bioluminescence. Another Kryptonian ability that manifested differently from Naruto's own light manipulation capabilities. The tunnel terminated at a small chamber of obvious Uzushio design, crystalline architecture integrated with the natural stone. Preservation mechanisms similar to but less sophisticated than Naruto's own stasis pod. Within the transparent section lay a young woman with distinctive red hair, a genetic marker of the Uzumaki bloodline. Status indicators pulsed with increasing urgency around the chamber's perimeter, warning symbols Naruto recognized immediately from his father's technical knowledge transfer. Cellular cohesion failing, he translated for Supergirl's benefit, moving quickly to the control interface. The preservation field is collapsing unevenly, causing molecular destabilization. His hands moved with increasing confidence across the crystal controls, ancestral knowledge guiding actions his conscious mind hadn't yet fully processed. The interface responded to his UCH, recognizing Uzumaki genetic markers even across millennia of dormancy. She's your relative? Supergirl asked, watching as the POD's systems began responding to his adjustments. Yes, Naruto confirmed, feeling an unexpected surge of emotion as he studied the young woman's face. Genetic markers suggest first-degree consanguinity, cousin or half-sibling. Her preservation pod was designed for shorter duration. with emphasis on genetic material rather than memory retention. The implications settled between them. This survivor might carry Uzumaki bloodline traits but lack the comprehensive knowledge transfer Naruto had received. A biological connection without the shared cultural context that defined his own identity. Her preservation field is too degraded for conventional awakening procedures, he continued. Focus returning to the immediate crisis. I'll need to synchronize my own chakra with her failing patterns, create stability through resonance. Without waiting for response, Naruto placed both palms directly against the pod's surface, closing his eyes as he extended his awareness into the sophisticated yet failing mechanisms. His chakra flowed outward, seeking Machen G patterns within the young woman's destabilizing cellular structure. Connection formed, tentative at first, then strengthening as genetic similarity facilitated resonance. Through this tenuous link, Naruto sensed fragments of identity, impressions rather than coherent memory. Determination, loyalty, fierce protectiveness toward family, specialized medical training interrupted by catastrophe. Karen, he murmured, the name surfacing through the connection. Her name is Karen. The pod's systems began stabilizing, preservation field harmonizing with Naruto's external support. Warning indicators shifted from critical to cautionary. Buying precious minutes until the STAR Labs team could arrive with more comprehensive equipment. Supergirl watched the process with evident fascination, her expression reflecting appreciation for technologies that paralleled yet differed from Kryptonian preservation systems. Your civilization achieved remarkable integration between biological and mechanical systems, she observed. Even Krypton maintained greater separation between living tissue and technological interface. Necessity drove innovation, Naruto explained, maintaining concentration on the stabilization process. Our world-crossing ancestors discovered that conventional technology couldn't survive dimensional transition intact. Only biotechnology, systems integrated with living SSUE, maintained coherence across reality barriers. This fundamental difference between their civilizations' approaches fascinated him even amid crisis management. Where Kryptonians had developed Stalin technology of incredible sophistication but distinct from their biological systems, Uzushio had pursued integration, blurring boundaries between organism and mechanism until distinction became meaningless. Their discussion paused as the STAR Labs team arrived, Sakura directing equipment deployment with efficient precision while Hinata used her Byakugan to assess aspects of the preservation pod invisible to conventional scanning. Her chakra network is severely compromised, Hinata reported, concern evident in her voice. The stasis field's collapse has caused cascading disruption throughout her system. Sakura immediately integrated this information with medical readings from her own equipment. Cellular degradation accelerating in specific regions, particularly nervous system tissues. We need to establish conventional life support immediately. A coordinated effort followed, Naruto maintaining chakra support while Sakura's team established medical interventions compatible with Uzumaki physiology. Hinata provided crucial guidance through her Byakugan's ability to track chakra flow patterns, identifying blockages and disruptions requiring immediate attention. Throughout this process, Supergirl assisted where possible while maintaining vigilance against potential external threats. Her presence provided both tactical support and psychological reassurance, an ally powerful enough to address unexpected complications should they arise. After nearly an hour of intensive intervention, the pod's system stabilized sufficiently to attempt awakening procedures. Naruto stepped back, allowing Sakura to direct the medical aspects while he prepared for potential psychological support. Awakening after even brief stasis often caused disorientation, he could only imagine had emergence after millennia might trigger in someone without his specialized preparation. Initiating final sequence, Sakura announced, activating procedures adapted from protocols used during Naruto's own emergence. Vital signs stabilizing, neural activity increasing, we have autonomous respiratory function. The preservation pod opened with a soft hissing sound, ancient mechanisms functioning with remarkable precision despite their age. Karen's eyelids fluttered, consciousness returning in gradual waves as her body readjusted to active function. When her eyes finally opened fully, they revealed the same distinctive shade as Naruto's, genetic markers of their shared bloodline. Her gaze wandered confusedly before focusing on his face with sudden intensity. "Uzumaki-sama," she whispered in ancient Uzushio dialect. Voice hoarse from disuse. "The High Sage sent you." Naruto knelt beside the pod, responding in the same language to ease her transition. "I am Naruto Uzumaki. The High Sage was my father." He hesitated, unsure how to convey the full truth of their situation gently. "You've been in preservation stasis, Karen. For a very long time." Her expression shifted from on fusion to dawning comprehension as she processed his words in the unfamiliar surroundings. The protocol was implemented. Then, Uzushio fell, Naruto confirmed gently. Over 3,000 years ago. The impact of this revelation rippled across her features. Shock, denial, grief cycling in rapid succession. Yet underlying these expected reactions, Naruto observed something surprising: resignation. As though part of her had always anticipated this outcome, had been prepared for it even before entering stasis. "The secondary chambers were theoretical," she said finally, "medical try. Ning apparently providing framework for processing the impossible situation. Experimental preservation systems with minimal knowledge transfer capacity. We weren't expected to survive. But you did," Naruto emphasized, offering her water which she accepted with shaking hands. "And you're not alone. There are 6 other chambers showing signs of activation. Other survivors." This information seemed to steady her, providing purpose beyond personal survival. "My research team," she murmured. "They were prioritized for preservation due to their specialized knowledge." Her gaze sharpened as she studied the medical equipment surrounding her. "This world's technology is peculiar. Advanced in some aspects, primitive in others. You'll have time to adjust," Naruto assured her. "These people have been helping me since my own awakening. They understand our situation better than most." He gestured toward the others, introducing each in turn. Karen studied them with increasing comprehension. Her initial disorientation fading as professional training reasserted itself. "A Hyuga," she noted, recognizing Hinata's distinctive eyes. "Your clan was allied with Uzushio. We valued your visual techniques for medical applications." Hinata bowed respectfully. "My family has maintained records of that alliance for generations. It's an honor to meet one who knew our ancestors directly." Karen turned her attention to Sakura, assessing the medical equipment with growing interest. "Your technological approach is different, but I recognize the underlying principles." "You're a healing specialist, doctor and researcher," Sakura confirmed, "specializing in metahuman physiology, individuals with abilities beyond normal human parameters." "Like us," Karen concluded, beginning to integrate EU terminology with her existing knowledge framework. Her gaze shifted to Supergirl, lingering on the distinctive costume and emblem. "You're not human. Your cellular structure resembles ours in some aspects. But the organization is fundamentally different." Supergirl seemed impressed by this immediate assessment. "Kryptonian. My world was destroyed, like Uzushio." A moment of recognition passed. Between them, survivors of civilizations erased from existence, carrying legacies few could truly comprehend. Naruto observed this interaction with interest, noting how quickly Karen processed and PTED to their extraordinary circumstances, a trait that would prove invaluable in the challenging transition ahead. "Can you stand?" Sakura asked, monitoring readings that suggested improving stability. Karen nodded, accepting assistance as she carefully emerged from the preservation pod. Her movements were initially tentative, but coordination returned quickly, another indication of the specialist's preparation she'd received before entering stasis. "The other chambers," she said, focusing on immediate priorities rather than dwelling on personal disorientation. "If they're awakening simultaneously, they'll face similar stabilization challenges. We should prioritize based on indicated degradation rates." Her swift transition from patient to active participant impressed the team, particularly Sakura, whose expression reflected professional appreciation for Karen's medical focus despite extraordinary circumstances. "The nearest active signature is in Greece," Hinata reported, consulting the global tracking system, showing fluctuation patterns similar to what we observed here, though not yet critical. "We should move quickly," Naruto decided, supporting Karen as they began moving toward the surface. Each awakening provides not only another survivor but potentially specialized knowledge essential for addressing the others. As they ascended toward daylight, Karen paused, Ove. RW helmed by her first glimpse of the modern world, brilliant sunlight illuminating a landscape both familiar in its natural elements and alien in its cultural context. It's really gone, she whispered. The full reality of their situation finally penetrating emotional defenses. Everything we knew, everyone we loved. Naruto placed a steadying hand on her shoulder, understanding perfectly the existential vertigo she experienced. Not everything, he corrected gently. We carry Uzushio within us, not just genetic material, but knowledge, values, purpose. My parents made sure of that. Karen studied him with newfound appreciation, recognizing the leadership quality that transcended mere bloodline inheritance. The last sage, she said, using the formal title with genuine respect. The Prof. ECIES spoke of your role should catastrophe befall our people. Prophecies can be misinterpreted, Naruto replied carefully, recalling his mother's warning about deliberately misleading narratives. My purpose here isn't to resurrect Uzushio as it was, but to preserve what was best about our civilization while adapting to this new world. She considered this perspective thoughtfully before nodding agreement. Integration rather than isolation. It's what the research division advocated before. She trailed off, memories of final arguments before destruction still fresh from her perspective despite millennia passing. Their conversation paused as they reached the surface, where the STAR Labs aircraft waited to transport them to the next awakening site. Karen studied the vessel with scientific curiosity, already analyzing its technological principles against her own knowledge framework. Your adaptation is impressive, Sakura noted, observing this assessment process. Most people, would be completely overwhelmed by such a temporal displacement. Medical specialists were selected for secondary preservation specifically for adaptive capability, Karen explained, accepting assistance boarding the aircraft. Our training emphasized cognitive flexibility and rapid integration of new information, essential traits for field medics during dimensional disturbances. As they settled into the aircraft, preparing for departure to Greece, Naruto found himself appreciating this pragmatic resilience, a quality that would prove essential as they located and assisted other awakening survivors. Karen's medical expertise complemented his broader sage knowledge, creating synergy that improved their collective capabilities. While flight preparations continued, Supergirl approached Naruto privately, her expression reflecting thoughtful consideration. She's handling this remarkably well, she observed. Better than I did when I first arrived on Earth, despite a much larger temporal displacement. Different preparation, Naruto explained. Your arrival was unexpected, a crisis response to Krypton's destruction. The Uzushio preservation protocol was planned for decades, with subjects selected and conditioned specifically for post-catastrophe adaptation. Still, the psychological impact of losing everything. Supergirl left the thought unfinished, personal experience making elaboration unnecessary. Naruto nodded understanding. It will come in waves. The initial shock, then functional adaptation driven by immediate necessities, followed by deeper grief once security is established. He glanced toward Karen, who was already engaged in technical discussion with Sakura, comparing medical approaches across millennia. Having purpose helps. Connection to others who understand. Like you found with us, Supergirl suggested with perceptive insight. The observation resonated unexpectedly, highlighting how quickly he had formed meaningful connections in this new world, bonds that provided not just tactical advantage but emotional anchoring. Hinata with her historical knowledge and quiet strength, Sakura's brilliant analytical mind and forthright manner, and Supergirl herself, a kindred spirit who understood the unique burden of carrying a lost civilization's legacy. Yes, he acknowledged simply. Like I found with you. The moment held unexpected significance, recognition of emerging bonds transcending professional alliance or circumstantial cooperation. In the midst of cosmic displacement and awakening powers, something fundamentally human was developing. Connection based on mutual understanding and shared purpose. As the aircraft lifted off, carrying them toward the next challenge in their unfolding mission, Naruto felt simultaneous weight and lightness. The burden of responsibility remained immense. 7 awakening survivors, ancient enemies potentially resurfacing, power that required careful management, yet no longer rested on his shoulders alone. The last sage was discovering that legacy could be shared rather than merely carried. And in that sharing, both burden and purpose were transformed. The next chapter of their journey await. D in Greece, another fragment of Uzushio's legacy preparing to rejoin a world that had continued 3 millennia beyond their understanding. Whatever challenges emerged, they would face them together, guided by the wisdom of civilizations long vanished yet present in those who carried their final hopes. Powers awakening, purpose clarifying, connection deepening. The journey had only just begun. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, Ancient Enemies. Dawn broke over the Hyuga compound, painting ancestral gardens in hues of gold and amber. Within a specially designed training arena, constructed with reinforced materials that could withstand forces beyond conventional physics, 2 figures moved in precisely choreographed combat. Neither fully human, both transcending normal limitations through fundamentally different evolutionary paths. Naruto pivoted sharply, narrowly avoiding a strike that would have shattered concrete. Solar energy crackled around his forearm as he countered with a technique unseen on Earth for millennia. Chakra molded into semi-solid form, extending his reach while maintaining flexibility no physical weapon could match. Supergirl smiled as she evaded the technique, her body flowing through air with practiced grace. Getting faster, she acknowledged, voice betraying no strain despite their hour-long session. Your body's remembering. Not fast enough. Frustration edged his tone as he reset his stance. Chakra pathways glowing faintly beneath his skin. The Raijin extension should form instantaneously, not with perceptible delay. 3 weeks ago you couldn't form it at all, she reminded him. Landing lightly across the arena. Her cape settled around her shoulders, the only part of her appearance showing any dishevelment after their intense training. Recovery isn't linear. You're expecting too much too quickly. Naruto exhaled slowly, conscious of the impatience he'd been struggling to manage. 2 weeks had passed since Morocco, during which they'd successfully located and awakened 4 of the 7 preservation chambers. Each survivor had brought specialized knowledge, distinct personalities, and unique challenges, all requiring his attention while his abilities continued their uneven re-emergence. My parents designed the stasis process to prepare me for immediate functionality upon awakening, he explained, frustration yielding to analytical assessment. Yet some techniques remain tantalizingly beyond reach, like trying to recall a word that sits at the edge of memory. The same happened with my powers, Supergirl offered, approaching with water bottles for them both. When I first arrived on Earth, my abilities manifested unpredictably, sometimes overwhelming, sometimes absent when needed most. This casual revelation caught Naruto's interest. Despite weeks of training together, Supergirl rarely discussed her early adaptation period, that vulnerable transition from refugee to hero. What helped stabilize them? Time. Practice. She smiled ruefully, handing him water. And catastrophic failures that taught painful but necessary lessons. Like the first time I tried stopping a falling helicopter and discovered my strength wasn't yet reliable under pressure. Naruto accepted both water and wisdom with a nod of appreciation. Their developing friendship had become unexpectedly significant, beyond tactical alliance to genuine understanding. Few others could comprehend the unique challenges of possessing abilities that set them fundamentally apart from humanity. The survivors we've awakened are adapting remarkably well, he observed, changing focus to immediate concerns. Karen's medical knowledge proved crucial for stabilizing the others, particularly Nagato's compromised chakra pathways. Meanwhile, you're pushing yourself toward collapse, Supergirl noted with perceptive directness. Even your remarkable healing factor has limits, especially while still recalibrating. Before Naruto could formulate a suitably dismissive response, their conversation was interrupted by the distinctive sound of Sakura's footsteps approaching the training arena. Her pace suggested urgency without crisis, important developments rather than emergency. Good morning, she called, entering with tablet in hand and characteristic determination in her stride. Despite the early hour, she appeared fully engaged, mind already processing multiple research threads simultaneously. I need blood samples from both of you. I've had a breakthrough regarding the solar radiation absorption patterns. Naruto exchanged glances with Supergirl, both recognizing Sakura's expression of scientific inspiration, a look that typically preceded significant discoveries but also demanded immediate cooperation with whatever experimental protocols she devised. What kind of breakthrough? Supergirl asked, following as Sakura led them toward the research facility established within the compound. A synthesis mechanism I didn't recognize before, Sakura explained, excitement evident beneath her professional demeanor. Naruto's cells don't just absorb solar radiation like Kryptonian physiology, they actively convert it into something new through interaction with his chakra pathways. The laboratory she had established combined cutting-edge technology with traditional Hyuga design elements, a fusion that seemed increasingly appropriate as understanding of Uzushio science advanced. Hinata was already present, discussing something with Karen while consulting ancient scrolls spread across a specially designed table. Both women looked up as they entered, their easy cooperation reflecting 2 weeks of intensive collaboration. Despite vastly different backgrounds and initially cautious interactions, they had developed efficient partners. Based on complementary knowledge, Hinata's historical context enhancing Karen's direct experience with Uzushio medical science. You found something? Karen asked, immediately noting Sakura's purposeful entrance. The conversion pathway, Sakura confirmed, immediately preparing equipment for blood collection. The missing link between Kryptonian-like solar processing and chakra generation. Naruto extended his arm without prompting, recognizing the value of Sakura's research beyond mere scientific curiosity. Understanding the mechanisms behind his abilities could potentially stabilize her unpredictable manifestation, addressing precisely the concerns he and Supergirl had just discussed. What exactly did you discover? He asked as Sakura efficiently collected samples from both him and Supergirl. Your cellular structure contains specialized organelles unlike anything in Earth's evolutionary record, she explained, transferring samples to analysis equipment with practiced precision. They function as conversion nodes, absorbing raw solar radiation like Kryptonian cells, but then transforming it into compatible energy forms your chakra network can distribute. The display activated, showing microscopic imaging of the described structures, intricate cellular components that appeared almost manufactured in their precision. Alongside, comparative imagery showed Supergirl's distinct Kryptonian cellular organization. It's almost like, Sakura hesitated, searching for appropriate terminology. Deliberate engineering, Karen completed, studying the images with professional interest. Because it was. The Sage bloodline underwent generations of directed modification before Naruto's birth. This confirmation of deliberate genetic manipulation, while not entirely surprising given previous revelations, still carried significant implications. Naruto studied the images thoughtfully, connecting this new information with knowledge received from his father's archive. The conversion mechanism explains the variable manifestation rates, he concluded, understanding dawning. My abilities aren't simply remembering, they're literally rebuilding underlying support structures after millennia of dormancy. Sakura nodded emphatically. Exactly. And more importantly, I think we can accelerate the process. She manipulated the display, showing theoretical treatment protocols. A precisely calibrated combination of specialized radiation exposure and chakra pathway stimulation could potentially stabilize the integration between systems. You're suggesting medical intervention to accelerate my recovery, Naruto summarized, considering implications. But with untested protocols based on preliminary understanding of uniquely complex physiology. I wouldn't propose it if the potential benefits didn't outweigh risks, Sakura countered, undeterred by his evident skepticism. The integration instability isn't just inconvenient, it's potentially dangerous as your power levels continue increasing without proportional control mechanisms. The concern was valid. Each day brought new manifestations of ability without corresponding precision. The occasional destructive results during training sessions had already necessitated multiple facility repairs, despite Naruto's careful restraint. Karen and I have reviewed the proposal, Hinata added, her quiet voice carrying unexpected weight. The approach integrates historical Hyuga chakra manipulation techniques with Uzushio medical science and Dr. Haruno's metahuman research. All three perspectives provide checks against potential complications. This measured endorsement from three distinct knowledge traditions carried persuasive significance. Naruto glanced at Supergirl, curious about her perspective as one who had navigated similar adaptation challenges. If Dr. Haruno believes it could help stabilize your abilities, I'd consider it, she offered thoughtfully. The unpredictability factor present, genuine risk, not just to you but to others nearby during manifestation events. The Democratic Council from allies with distinct expertise provided valuable perspective without reducing his agency in the decision. This collaborative approach reflected an adaptive leadership model Naruto found himself appreciating, fundamentally different from Uzushio's more hierarchical authority structures, yet potentially more resilient for addressing complex challenges in this new world. How soon could the treatment begin? He asked, decision crystallizing through balanced assessment rather than either reckless acceptance or excessive caution. We could initiate preliminary protocols today, Sakura replied, already mentally transitioning from theoretical proposal to practical implementation. Starting with baseline calibrations to establish optimal radiation wavelengths for your specific cellular structure. As discussions shifted toward technical implementation details, Naruto noticed Hinata moving toward a separate workstation where ancient scrolls lay partially unrolled. Her expression suggested preoccupation with matters beyond the immediate medical discussion, something she had read requiring attention but not yet urgent enough to interrupt. He excused himself from the technical planning, approaching her workstation with quiet respect for her focused concentration. You found something in the records. Hinata looked up, momentary surprise yielding to recognition. Despite weeks of close collaboration, she still occasionally seemed startled by his direct attention, a reaction he found both puzzling and endearing. Yes, she confirmed, gesturing toward scrolls bearing distinctive spiral patterns marking them as particularly significant in Hyuga archival classification. While researching chakra pathway stabilization techniques, I discovered references to something called the Crimson Prophecy, specifically mentioning the awakening of the last sage. Naruto's expression shifted subtly at this revelation. His parents had explicitly warned about manipulated prophecies concerning his return, deliberate misinformation planted to confuse potential misuse of Uzushio knowledge. Yet genuine predictive techniques had existed among certain Uzushio disciplines, particularly those studying dimensional convergence patterns. May I? He asked, indicating the ancient text. Hinata nodded, carefully repositioning the fragile document for his examination. The script was archaic even by Uzushio standards, dating from the early transitional period after his ancestors' arrival on Earth. Despite the language's antiquity, Naruto could interpret key passages through combination of inherited knowledge and context. When 3 moons align in heavens unseen, the Crimson Sage shall walk between worlds. He translated, finger-tracing characters with reverent precision. Ancient enemy awakens in response, seeking power that transcends mortal bonds. The spiral unwinds, tightens anew through sacrifice and reunion. The 3 moons reference caught my attention, Hinata explained, highlighting astronomical notations in the margin. It initially seemed metaphorical, but cross-referenced astronomical records suggest actual alignment involving lunar nodes and specific planetary configurations. Occurring when? Naruto asked, immediately grasping potential significance. 3 weeks from now, she replied quietly, a convergence pattern that occurs only once every 397 years, according to our astronomical records. The timing could not be coincidental, his awakening preceding this rare celestial configuration by mere months after 3 millennia of dormancy. Whether through deliberate design by his parents or cosmic synchronicity beyond their control, events were clearly accelerating toward something significant. Ancient enemy awakens, he repeated thoughtfully. My mother warned about Madara potentially surviving through forbidden techniques. This may confirm her concern wasn't merely precautionary. Hinata nodded gravely. The Hyuga records contain scattered references to encounters with individuals claiming Uchiha lineage throughout our history, incidents separated by generations but described with disturbing consistency. Before they could pursue this concerning revelation further, the laboratory's communication system activated urgent tone indicating priority message. Sakura moved immediately to the console, activating the secure channel established for their specialized team. Colonel Haley's face appeared on screen, her typically composed expression showing subtle tension that immediately commanded attention. We have a situation in Athens. The archaeological team examining the Uzushio artifacts recovered from the Orth preservation site was attacked 30 minutes ago. Images appeared alongside the video feed, devastation within a specialized research facility. Bodies lay among destroyed equipment and shattered containment systems. Most disturbing were distinctive burn patterns on walls and floors, geometric shapes suggesting methodical purpose rather than random destruction. Survivors report assailants with unusual abilities. Haley continued, military precision constraining evident concern. Specifically, they described eyes that glowed red, and techniques that seemed to duplicate the researchers' own security measures. The description sent ice through Naruto's veins, confirmation of his worst fears articulated with terrible precision. Uchiha, he stated, voice flat with certainty. Madara's followers, if not Madara himself. The timing aligns with Hinata's prophecy research, Karen noted, immediately connecting disparate information streams. The enemy awakening in response to your return. What were they after? Supergirl asked, focusing on immediate tactical assessment. Specifically targeting artifacts from the third and fourth preservation chambers, Haley reported. Documentation suggests these contained specialized knowledge relating to dimensional barrier technology and chakra transmission systems. Components for portal creation, Naruto translated for the others' benefit. Foundational technologies for traversing between dimensional planes, or potentially between time streams, with sufficient power amplification. The implications were staggering. An ancient enemy not merely seeking revenge but actively acquiring components for reality manipulation technology. Motivations remained speculative, but potential threat scale expanded exponentially with each new piece of information. We need to secure the remaining artifacts immediately, Naruto decided, leadership asserting naturally through crisis response training. And establish protection protocols for the awakened survivors. Their specialized knowledge makes them priority targets beyond the physical technology. Already initiated, Haley confirmed. But our conventional security measures proved ineffective against these attackers. We need your team on site in Athens immediately to assess the situation and determine countermeasures. Plans crystallized rapidly. Naruto and Supergirl would proceed immediately to Athens while Sakura prepared the stabilization treatment for implementation upon their return. Karen would coordinate protection protocols for the other awakened Uzumaki survivors, utilizing both modern security systems and traditional chakra-based defenses. Hinata's role emerged through practical necessity rather than formal assignment, her historical knowledge and Byakugan abilities providing unique capacity for identifying Uchiha signatures that conventional detection systems might miss. Despite having no combat training comparable to the others, she volunteered immediately to accompany the Athens response team. The prophecy texts contain specific references to Uchiha vulnerabilities, she explained, already gathering relevant documentation. Information preserved specifically for this contingency. As the team prepared for immediate deployment, Naruto found himself experiencing unexpected emotional turbulence beneath tactical focus. The abstract threat his had warned about had manifested with terrible concreteness. Enemies who had destroyed his civilization now actively hunting elements of its legacy in this new era. Supergirl noticed his momentary distraction, approaching as others focused on preparation tasks. This was always a possibility, she noted quietly, insight born from similar experience. That your enemies might have survived alongside your civilization's legacy. Knowing theoretically differs from confronting reality, he acknowledged, appreciating her perception. I've spent weeks focused on recovery and adaptation, helping the other survivors. Almost allowing myself to believe the greatest challenges were behind us. They were never behind you, she corrected gently. Just temporarily aligned with your immediate goals. Recovery and adaptation were necessary first steps before confronting historical threats. Her perspective provided valuable reframing. Not dismissing legitimate concerns but contextualizing them within broader strategic progression. This emotional intelligence complemented her physical capabilities, creating leadership depth Naruto increasingly valued. We should move quickly, he concluded. Resolve strengthening through supportive interaction rather than isolation. The attack suggests they've been observing our activities, gathering information while we focused on awakening the preservation chambers. Which means they may know about the other survivors, Supergirl concluded, immediately grasping strategic implications. We're not just responding to an attack, we're potentially racing against parallel operations targeting multiple objectives simultaneously. This assessment catalyzed immediate action. Within minutes, the response team had assembled on the compound's landing pad, where specialized transport waited, a Deo aircraft modified with STAR Labs technology for enhanced speed and defensive capabilities. As they boarded, Sakura approached Naruto with last-minute ICAL equipment, specialized monitoring devices designed to track his physiological responses during potential combat situations. The stabilization treatment becomes even more critical now, she emphasized, efficiently attaching sensors to specific points corresponding with major chakra pathway junctions. Combat situations will likely trigger accelerated power manifestation through adrenaline response, potentially exceeding your current control parameters. Understood, Naruto acknowledged, recognizing her concern as professionally valid rather than overprotective. We'll proceed with the treatment protocol immediately upon return. Just try not to tear reality apart before then, she replied with characteristic directness, though underlying concern softened her tone. The sensors will transmit real-time data. I'll monitor remotely and provide guidance if your systems approach critical thresholds. This arrangement reflected their evolving professional relationship, her scientific expertise complementing his combat capabilities through technological interface. Despite initial formality when they'd first met, genuine respect had developed between them. Sakura's brilliant analytica mind engaging with challenges his unique physiology presented, while he increasingly valued her uncompromising focus on evidence-based approaches. As the aircraft lifted off, Naruto found himself reflecting on how quickly he had developed meaningful connections in this new world. Hinata with her quiet strength and historical knowledge, Karen and the other survivors providing links to his past while adapting alongside him. Sakura's brilliant mind constantly pushing boundaries of conventional understanding. Supergirl's unique ability to comprehend his experience as fellow survivor of lost civilization. Each relationship distinct, each valuable in different ways, creating support network fundamentally different from hierarchical structures he remembered from Uzushio, yet potentially more resilient through diversity of perspective and capability. Such reflections were necessarily brief as tactical considerations took priority. The flight to Athens would take approximately 40 minutes. Despite the aircraft's enhanced capabilities, time Naruto utilized for comprehensive briefing on the research facility's layout, security systems, and specific artifacts being studied there. The artifacts from the fourth preservation chamber included specialized chakra transmission equipment, he explained, displaying schematics derived from his father's knowledge transfer. Components that, while individually limited in capability, could potentially be modified for large-scale application when combined with other Uzushio technologies. To what end? Hinata asked, studying the schematics WITH activated by Akugan to perceive aspects conventional vision might miss. Dimensional manipulation, Naruto replied grimly. Specifically, the creation of stable portals between reality planes, or potentially between time streams. Though that application was theoretical even in Uzushio's most advanced research, Supergirl frowned, immediately grasping implications. You're suggesting they might attempt to change historical events, perhaps prevent Uzushio's destruction, or ensure it happens differently, Naruto corrected, perspective shifting through tactical assessment. Madara's original objective wasn't destruction for its own sake, but acquisition of specific technologies and abilities. Uzushio's complete collapse likely represented failure rather than success from his perspective. This insight changed the threat assessment fundamentally, not mere revenge or destruction, but calculated acquisition toward specific objective. An enemy seeking not to erase Uzushio's legacy but to control and repurpose it toward goals antithetical to its original purpose. Approaching Athens airspace, the pilot announced, interrupting their strategic discussion. Satellite imagery shows UAL energy signatures at the research facility, patterns consistent with active chakra manipulation. Naruto moved immediately to the observation systems, enhancing conventional sensor data with his own perceptual abilities. What he detected confirmed their worst fears, distinctive energy patterns indicating multiple individuals utilizing techniques derived from Uzushio principles but corrupted fundamental misunderstanding of their underlying nature. They're still there, he confirmed, focus sharpening as tactical assessment overrode philosophical concerns. At least 5 individuals, with active chakra signatures, inconsistent patterns suggesting imperfect control but significant raw power. Defense or offense? Supergirl asked practically, already preparing for imminent engagement. Both, Naruto replied, continuing his assessment. They've established barrier techniques around the facility's central laboratory, likely where they're processing the stolen artifacts. But they also positioned offensive specialists at strategic access points. Hinata activated her Byakugan, extending perception beyond conventional limitations. I can see them, she confirmed, voice steady. Why? Despite the strain extended range placed on her abilities. Their chakra networks show distinctive distortion patterns, especially around the ocular region. Confirming Uchiha visual techniques, Naruto translated for the others. Their distinctive genetic ability allows them to analyze and copy observed techniques through specialized ocular chakra manipulation, which makes conventional tactical approaches problematic. Supergirl concluded, if they can observe and potentially counter our abilities upon exposure. This fundamental challenge required immediate adaptation of standard engagement protocols. Naruto considered options, drawing on both Uzushio military training and tactical assessments of their current team's unique capabilities. We'll approach from multiple vectors simultaneously, he decided. Supergirl from above, utilizing speed to minimize observation time before engagement. I'll approach through subterranean access, emerging within their established perimeter to disrupt internal coordination. Hinata will remain with the aircraft, providing continuous Byakugan observation to track movement patterns and identify priority targets. The plan leveraged each team members' strengths while accounting for the unique threat presented by enemies capable of technique replication. By forcing them to divide attention between multiple simultaneous threats, they could potentially overcome the Uchiha's adaptive advantage through tactical dispersion. As the aircraft positioned for deployment, Naruto performed final equipment checks, specialized communication devices adapted to function through chakra disruption fields, sensor array monitoring his physiological responses for Sakura's remote assessment, and tactical gear designed to complement rather than restrict his movements. Approaching drop point, the pilot announced. Perimeter established 1 kilometer from target facility to avoid preliminary detection. Supergirl moved toward the deployment hatch, pausing briefly beside Naruto. Remember your training, she said simply. Don't force techniques that aren't fully stabilized. Work with what responds naturally rather than what you think should be available. The advice reflected weeks of collaborative training, her experience helping navigate the unpredictable manifestation of his reawakening abilities. He acknowledged with a nod of appreciation, recognizing the wisdom in focusing on reliable capabilities rather than attempting techniques still beyond consistent control. 30 seconds to deployment, the system announced. Naruto turned to Hinata, who had established position at specialized monitoring equipment configured to enhance her Byakugan's range and precision. Any changes in their positioning? They've detected approaching aircraft signatures, she reported. Voice calm despite evident concern. 2 individuals moving to roof positions, likely preparing aerial interception techniques. 3 remain with the artifacts in the central laboratory, continuing some form of extraction procedure. This information required immediate tactical adjustment. Change of approach, Naruto decided. Supergirl, engage the roof defend. Directly, your speed should provide advantage before they can analyze your capabilities fully. I'll bypass perimeter defenses entirely and drop directly into the central laboratory through structural weak points Hinata identifies. The revised plan increased personal risk but potentially improved mission success probability, disrupting the artifact extraction directly while aerial defenders were occupied with Supergirl's diversionary engagement. Her Kryptonian abilities, while potentially vulnerable to analysis, would require significantly more observation time than conventional techniques be. E4 Uchiha visual copying became effective. Deployment positions, the system announced. Opening hatches in 5 seconds. Final glances exchanged between team members conveyed more than words could efficiently express: trust, determination, concern, resolve. Then the hatches opened, and coordinated movement replaced communication as each transitioned to assigned roles with practiced precision. Supergirl launched first, body accelerating to blur-inducing speed as she arrowed toward the facility below. Naruto followed moments later, chakra already forming complex patterns around his body. As he initiated a specialized transportation technique, Not teleportation in the conventional sense, but accelerated movement through precisely controlled spatial compression between origin and destination points. Wind rushed past as he fell, senses extended beyond normal parameters to perceive the battlefield in comprehensive detail. Below, the research facility spread across several interconnected buildings, modern architecture incorporating specialized reinforcement for containing potentially hazardous artifacts. Structural analysis revealed multiple access points, each protected by conventional security measures supplemented with recently established chakra barriers. Central laboratory located in sub-basement level 3, Hinata's voice reported through the communication system. Individuals surrounding what appears to be a specialized containment unit. They're extracting something from the artifacts, channeling energy into portable storage devices. Naruto adjusted his trajectory accordingly, calculating optimal insertion point to minimize structural damage while maximizing tactical advantage. His body twisted midair, chakra condensing around him as he accelerated toward a specific ventilation access point Hinata had identified as intersecting with the laboratory's environmental control system. Behind him, brilliant light flashed as Supergirl engaged the rooftop defenders, her heat vision cutting through hastily erected barrier techniques before they could fully analyze her capabilities. The distraction worked perfectly, drawing attention upward while Naruto's approach remained undetected through careful chakra suppression techniques. Impact with the ventilation system was precisely controlled, minimizing noise while creating sufficient opening for rapid descent. Naruto moved through the narrow passage with fluid efficiency, chakra supporting his body as he navigated toward the laboratory below. Through the communication system, he could hear Supergirl's engagement progressing, controlled destruction keeping the aerial defenders occupied without escalating to potentially catastrophic power levels. Approaching target location, he sub-vocalized, communication system transmitting to both Hinata and Supergirl despite minimal vocalization. Status update on laboratory occupants. Still focused on extraction procedures, Hinata confirmed. They haven't detected your approach. The artifacts are being processed through some kind of conversion matrix, transforming solid matter into energy patterns stored in crystalline devices. This description matched Uzushio technology designed for efficient transport of complex technical systems, converting physical components into information patterns that could be reconstituted later with proper equipment. The process required specific knowledge to implement correctly, suggesting these weren't merely hired mercenaries but individuals with direct connection to Uzushio's technical legacy. Naruto reached the final access point, chakra senses extending through the barrier separating him from the laboratory below. 3 distinct signatures confirmed Hinata's count, each showing the distinctive distort ion patterns associated with Uchiha genetic modifications, though with significant variations suggesting different specialization areas. He paused momentarily, analyzing optimal engagement approach based on positioning and apparent capabilities. Direct confrontation would trigger immediate defensive response, potentially damaging the very artifacts they aimed to secure. Instead, he formed a sequence of hand seals, molding chakra into specialized configuration. Shadow clone technique, he whispered, channeling precisely controlled energy into the advanced technique. 4 perfect duplicates materialized beside him in the confined space, each containing portion of his consciousness and capability, though with reduced overall power to maintain stability. This force multiplication would allow simultaneous engagement of multiple targets while potentially confusing the Uchiha's analytical visual techniques. Engaging now, he communicated. Supergirl, maintain rooftop containment for approximately 3 more minutes. Then prepare for potential reinforcement requirement. Without waiting for acknowledgement, Naruto executed the final phase of infiltration, his original body and 4 clones simultaneously breaching different access points into the laboratory below. The coordinated insertion created momentary confusion among the occupants, exactly as intended. The laboratory itself presented stark contrast between modern scientific equipment and ancient Uzushio artifacts, crystalline structures glowing with internal energy as extraction procedures neared completion. 3 figures stood at equidistant points around a central containment unit, hands moving through complex seal sequences as they directed energy flow between artifacts and storage devices. Their reaction to the Multiple simultaneous intrusions demonstrated trained precision despite surprise, each immediately shifting from extraction procedures to coordinated defense without verbal communication. Most telling, their eyes activated simultaneously, irises shifting from normal appearance to distinctive red pattern with rotating tomo marks that confirmed Uchiha lineage. The last sage himself, the central figure, observed, voice carrying unexpected reverence despite hostile positioning. Your intervention was statistically probable but temporally uncertain. The Crimson Prophecy suggested later confrontation. This reference to the very prophecy Hinata had discovered hours earlier confirmed coordinated intelligence gathering far beyond coincidental timing. These weren't opportunistic scavengers but calculated operators working from comprehensive strategic framework. You know who I am, Naruto acknowledged, original body maintaining position while clones established surrounding pattern. Yet I Chi recognize your chakra signatures from Uzushio's final conflict. We are generations removed from the original Uchiha who opposed your civilization, the figure replied, maintaining precise chakra control despite conversation. Descendants carrying both bloodline and purpose across centuries of preparation. This confirmation of organized multi-generational effort shifted threat assessment significantly, not merely surviving individuals but structured organization preserving both techniques and objectives across millennia. The implications extended far beyond immediate tactical concerns to strategic challenges requiring comprehensive response. What purpose justifies desecrating my people's legacy? Naruto demanded, simultaneously assessing optimal engagement timing while gathering intelligence through dialogue. Desecration. The figure seemed genuinely surprised by the characterization. We seek preservation and restoration, fulfillment of potential your ancestors deliberately constrained. Uzushio's knowledge was meant for all humanity, not sequestered behind bloodline limitations. This perspective revealed dangerous misunderstanding of fundamental Uzushio principles, Tekken. Ologies restricted precisely because their power exceeded ethical constraints that could reliably govern their application. Without corresponding philosophical framework, technical knowledge alone created catastrophic risk through application divorced from intended purpose. You cannot understand what you seek to control, Naruto stated, chakra beginning to manifest visibly around his body as patience yielded to necessary action. Return the artifacts now. This facility remains under protection protocols established for humanity's safety, not arbitrary restriction. The three figures exchanged glances, some unspoken communication passing between them before the central individual spoke again. We acknowledge your symbolic authority as last sage, but historical imperatives supersede individual jurisdiction. The convergence approaches. Preparation cannot be delayed for philosophical debate. Their reference to convergence aligned with astronomical configurations Hinata had identified. Further confirmation of coordinated efforts specifically targeting the upcoming celestial alignment. Whatever their specific objectives, timing clearly centered around this imminent astronomical event. Further dialogue would yield diminishing returns against increasingly evident resistance to peaceful resolution. Naruto shifted mental focus from information gathering to combat engagement, chakra pathways fully activating as he prepared specialized techniques appropriate for the confined laboratory environment. Hinata, status update on rooftop engagement. He sub-vocalized, maintaining outward focus on laboratory opponents. Supergirl has neutralized one opponent, she reported promptly. The second has adopted defensive positioning behind specialized barrier techniques. No additional hostiles detected approaching the facility. This information completed tactical assessment. 5 opponents total, 2 engaged by Supergirl, 3 requiring his immediate attention. Artifact extraction. Nearing completion necessitated immediate intervention despite incomplete understanding of opponents' full capabilities. Final opportunity to stand down, Naruto offered, fulfilling ethical obligate. Ion despite tactical readiness for negative response. The central figure's expression shifted to something approaching regret. We honor your position while rejecting your authority. The path forward requires difficult decisions transcending individual preference. With dialogue options exhausted, simultaneous action commenced, Naruto and his shadow clones engaging each opponent through coordinate techniques designed to separate them from the central containment unit. His original body targeted the apparent leader, while clones engaged supporting operators through flanking maneuvers. What if Although demonstrated combat evolution spanning millennia, Uzushio techniques preserved through Naruto's genetic memory confronting Uchiha adaptations developed across generations of specialized training. The laboratory erupted into controlled chaos as techniques manifested with devastating precision from both sides. The Uchiha demonstrated their infamous visual copying abilities immediately, eyes-t. Racking Naruto's movements with unnatural precision, bodies responding with techniques mirroring his own after minimal observation. Yet this adaptive advantage came with fundamental limitation: they old copy techniques but not the underlying chakra capacity that made Naruto's versions devastatingly effective. Their replication is superficial, Hinata observed through the communication system, b. Yakugan providing detailed analysis beyond conventional perception. They're creating approximate simulations rather than true duplication, like copying words without understanding their meaning. T's assessment provided critical tactical advantage, allowing Naruto to deliberately demonstrate techniques requiring chakra capacity beyond their replication threshold, forcing inefficient countermeasures that gradually depleted their more limited reserves. The central figure proved most dangerous, demonstrating not just copying ability but innovative adaptation, combining observed techniques with previously mastered capabilities to create unpredictable response patterns. His movements suggested formal sage training, though imperfectly implemented without complete understanding of underlying principles. "You've studied Uzushio combat forms," Naruto observed, evading a particularly effective combination attack while positioning for counter-engagement. "Yet your execution lacks fundamental understanding of chakra flow principles." "We preserved what records survived," the figure acknowledged, maintaining impressive composure despite increasingly challenging combat conditions. Fragments, reassembled through generations of dedicated study. Imperfect but evolving, as all knowledge must. This philosophical perspective amidst combat revealed disturbing insight into their organizational mindset, perceiving themselves as legitimate inheritors of Uzushio knowledge rather than hostile appropriators. Such conviction made negotiated resolution increasingly unlikely, reinforcing necessity for decisive intervention. The engagement intensified as both sides escalated techniques, laboratory infrastructure suffering increasing damage despite attempts to minimize collateral effects. Most concerning, the artifact extraction process continued despite combat disruption, automated systems completing procedures initiated before Naruto's arrival. "The extraction sequence is nearing completion," Hinata warned. 87% conversion according to monitoring indicators. "Whatever they're taking, it's almost processed." This information forced tactical adaptation, prioritizing extract-on disruption over opponent neutralization. Naruto signaled his shadow clones through subtle chakra fluctuation, coordinating simultaneous disengagement from individual opponents to converge on the central containment system. The Uchiha recognized this strategic shift immediately, their own positioning adjusting to maintain protective formation around the extraction equipment. What followed was precisely calculated combat chess, each side maneuvering for positional advantage while deploying increasingly specialized techniques appropriate for confined space engagement. Through the communication system, Naruto could hear Supergirl's rooftop battle reaching similar critical phase, her opponent having analyzed sufficient patterns to develop limited countermeasures to her abilities, though still overwhelmed by her superior power projection. Requesting status update, her voice came through, slight strain indicating significant exertion despite Kryptonian resilience. These opponents demonstrate unusual adaptive capabilities, techniques evolving during engagement to specifically counter observed patterns. Confirmed, Naruto replied tersely, maintaining combat focus while providing essential coordination. Uchiha visual techniques allow limited replication of observed abilities. Modify your approach to utilize overwhelming force in unpredictable configurations rather than precision techniques they can analyze. This tactical guidance reflected their weeks of training together, developing complementary understanding of each other's capabilities that now translated into effect for combat adaptation despite separated engagement zones. Within the laboratory, the confrontation approached critical threshold as extraction equipment began final conversion sequence, artifacts transforming completely into energy patterns stored within specialized crystal matrices. Naruto recognized the technology from his father's knowledge transfer, information storage systems designed for preservation Ving complex technical specifications across dimensional transitions. We've gotten what we came for, the central figure announced, subtle hand signal directing his companions toward predetermined extraction positions. Further confrontation serves no productive purpose. You're not leaving with Uzushio technology, Naruto stated flatly, chakra condensing around his body in preparation for decisive technique deployment. Whatever you believe your purpose to be, those artifacts contain knowledge beyond your ethical framework to properly utilize. The figure smiled, an expression containing genuine understanding rather than mockery. Your perspective honors your lineage while reflecting its limitations. The convergence approaches. Choices must transcend conventional ethical frameworks when existence itself hangs in balance. This cryptic statement preceded coordinated action from all three opponents, not attacking Naruto directly as anticipated, but implementing some previously prepared extraction technique. Their hands formed synchronized seal sequences, channeling chakra into patterns Naruto recognized too late as dimensional displacement preparation. They're attempting spatial transition, he warned through the communication system. Some form of modified transportation technique. Hinata's response came immediately, Byakugan already tracking the developing energy patterns. Confirmed. Chakra configurations matching historical records of Uchiha space-time manipulation. Unstable but potentially functional for short-range transition. Recognizing imminent escape attempt, Naruto abandoned measured engagement for decisive intervention, chakra surging as he implemented an advanced sage technique designed specifically for countering dimensional manipulation. His body blurred with acceleration beyond conventional physics, intercepting the central figure before transition sequence completed. The collision disrupted carefully coordinated technique implementation, chakra. A patterns destabilizing as conflicting energies interacted chaotically. Alarms blared throughout the facility as monitoring systems detected dangerous reality fluctuations within the laboratory space. Dimensional stability compromised, Hinata reported urgently. Conflicting techniques creating localized reality distortion. Recommend immediate disengagement and containment implementation. The warning came too late. Destabilized energies collapsed inward, creating momentary dimensional aperture that engulfed Naruto and the central Uchiha figure. Their surroundings shifted, conventional Spock. E-time briefly suspended as they transitioned into intermediate dimensional state, neither fully present in physical reality nor completely separated from it. Within this distorted perceptual field, Ime functioned differently, seconds stretching to subjective minutes while surrounding reality appeared frozen in transitional state. The experience triggered unexpected response in Naruto's consciousness. Memories long dormant suddenly accessible with painful clarity. Fire-consuming crystal spires. Screams echoing through dimensional ruptures. His parents' faces as reality itself fractured around them. Live, Naruto. When you wake, our world will be gone, but you must carry our legacy. The memories weren't merely recalled but experienced, sensory information preserved within specialized raw structures designed to maintain critical knowledge even through trauma-induced suppression. Through this unexpected activation, Naruto suddenly accessed comprehensive understanding of Uzushio's final moments, details his conscious mind had protected him from until necessity demanded their recovery. Across from him, suspended in the same dimensional distortion, the Uchiha figure experienced similar memory cascade, his expression shifting from calculated control to shocked recognition as inherited genetic memory activated through dimensional resonance. You're seeing it too, Naruto realized. Perception extending beyond physical senses to chakra-mediated awareness. The true history, not the narrative your organization preserved, but actual events as they occurred. The figure's response came slowly, consciousness struggling to integrate conflicting information streams. This cannot. The records state clearly that Uzushio initiated hostilities, that Madara sought only to prevent catastrophic technology deployment. History written by those who survived, Naruto countered, understanding flowing from newly accessible memories. Madara deliberately corrupted Uzushio's diamonds. Ional anchors from within, triggering catastrophic failure that destroyed an entire civilization to obtain power he couldn't earn through legitimate means. Uncertainty flickered across the Uchiha's Ichers, generations of organizational doctrine confronting directly experienced memory activation. This cognitive dissonance created potential psychological leverage Naruto recognized from conflict resolution training. Your organization preserved fragments of knowledge across generations, he acknowledged, tone shifting from confrontational to understanding. Maintaining purpose and identity thr. Our catastrophic loss, exactly as the Hyuga did for Uzushio's legacy. But the narrative foundation contains deliberate corruption, designed by Madara himself to justify actions even his followers might otherwise have rejected. The dimensional distortion began collapsing around them, temporary stability yielding to physical reality's reassertion. Before transition completed, Naruto made final to potential rationality within ideological framework. When we return, verify what you've experienced against original records, not interpreted narratives passed through generations, but primary documentation preserved by both Uchiha and Hyuga traditions. Truth exists beyond organizational doctrine. Reality snapped back into conventional parameters with disorienting suddenness, laboratory matte aerializing around them as dimensional distortion collapsed completely. The interruption had lasted mere seconds in objective time, though subjective experience extended significantly longer through perceptual distortion. Combat conditions had evolved during the brief anomaly, Naruto's shadow clones maintaining engagement with secondary opponents while Supergirl had broken through from roof level to provide reinforcement. The extraction equipment showed damage from reality distortion, conversion process interrupted at 93% completion. The central Uchiha figure recovered quickly from dimensional transition, though his expression revealed lingering psychological impact from memory activation. His companions moved to defensive positions around him, recognizing leadership destabilization without understanding its specific cause. Withdraw, he ordered unexpectedly, voice containing uncertainty absent from previous interactions. Secure what we've obtained and implement contingency evacuation protocol. His companions hesitated momentarily, clearly surprised by disengagement order when extraction remained incomplete. Their hesitation proved costly as Supergirl utilized he momentary disorganization to implement containment techniques, super speed allowing her to neutralize secondary opponents before they could react appropriately. The central figure alone retained sufficient situational awareness to implement emergency extraction, a specialized transportation technique different from their previous attempt. Before Naruto could intercept, space distorted around him, in controlled pattern fundamentally different from the chaotic distortion they had experienced together. This isn't finished, he stated, eyes meeting Naruto's with complex mixture of uncertainty and determination. What I experienced requires verification against historical records. Until then, operational parameters remain unchanged. He vanished with controlled displacement effect, taking he partially converted artifact data with him, approximately 90% of the extraction completed before interruption. The remaining Uchiha operatives had been successfully neutralized by Supergirl's intervention, unconscious but stable for subsequent detention and interrogation. The laboratory fell momentarily silent as combat conditions yielded to assessment phase, damage evaluation and intelligence gathering taking priority over immediate pursuit of the escaped leader. Supergirl approached Naruto, concern evident in her expression as she noted the disorientation lingering from his dimensional experience. What happened? She asked, supporting him as chakra depletion began manifesting through physical symptoms. One moment you were engaging their leader, then both of you just froze in some kind of energy field. Dimensional resonance, Naruto explained, struggling to articulate experience that transcended conventional descriptive framework. Our conflicting techniques created temporary reality distortion, triggering memory activation through specialized neural pathways. Hinata joined them, Byakugan still active as she assessed residual energy patterns throughout the laboratory. The chakra configurations match historical descriptions of truth revelation technique, a specialized Uzushio application designed for accessing suppressed memories during peace negotiations. This historical context provided framework for understanding the unexpected phenomenon, not random interaction but activation of preserved Uzushio technology integrated within Naruto's genetic memory. Triggered by specific dimensional frequency resonance during technique conflict. I remembered Uzushio's fall, Naruto explained, processing implications as he articulated experience. Not just Intellectual knowledge transferred from my parents' messages, but direct sensory perception, what I personally witnessed before being placed in stasis. Details my conscious mind had suppressed due to trauma intensity. The Uchiha leader experienced something similar, Supergirl observed, having witnessed his expression during the phenomenon. His vital signs changed dramatically, heart rate and neurological patterns indicating severe psychological impact. This shared experience created potential strategic opportunity beyond immediate tactical considerations. The Uchiha leader had experience. Direct memory activation challenging organizational doctrine, internal conflict that might eventually facilitate negotiated resolution rather than continued confrontation. We should secure these prisoners and remaining artifacts, Naruto decided, professional focus reasserting despite lingering psychological impact from memory activation. Their leader escaped with significant portion of the extracted data, but approximately 10% remained unconverted when the process was interrupted. As they implemented recovery protocols, securing both prisoners and artifacts for transport back to secure facilities. Naruto found himself processing multiple simultaneous realizations from the unexpected memory activation. Beyond tactical implications lay profound personal significance, connection to Uzushio's final moments, providing context previously accessible only through second-hand accounts. He had been there, had witnessed civilizations collapse firsthand before preservation protocols activated. The emotional impact of these memories, though partially processed through neural pathway design specifically intended to prevent traumatic disruption, still created significant psychological resonance requiring integration. Supergirl remained close throughout recovery operations, her perception clearly registering his internal processing despite outward professional focus. When operational necessities permitted momentary privacy, she approached with characteristic directness tempered by genuine concern. When I first came to Earth, memories of Krypton's destruction would sometimes surface unexpectedly, she offered. Sharing personal experience rather than mere sympathy. Triggered by sounds, light patterns, even certain emotional states. The neural pathways holding trauma can activate without warning, especially during periods of stress or when encountering similar stimuli. This shared experience created connection transcending conventional support, understanding derived from parallel trauma rather than abstract empathy. Naruto found himself appreciating this unique perspective that neither Hinata nor Sakura, for all their valuable insights, could provide. The memories were always there, he acknowledged, but accessing them directly rather than through knowledge transfer creates different integration challenges. It's more immediate, more personal, because it's yours, she confirmed with perfect understanding. Not information provided about your civilization's fall, but your direct experience of it. That changes the relationship to the knowledge fundamentally. This distinction articulated precisely what he had been processing internally, the transformation of abstract historical understanding into lived personal experience. Whatever tactical and strategic implications emerged from the confrontation, this psychological dimension represented equally significant development requiring careful integration. As they prepared for departure with secured prisoners and remaining artifacts, Naruto found himself reflecting on how consistently this new world presented simultaneous external and internal challenges, combat situations paired with psychological development. Tactical decisions intertwined with identity integration. The pattern suggested deliberate design rather than coincidental progression. Perhaps this integrated development approach represented necessary adaptation pathway, both recovering abilities and psychological resilience simultaneously rather than sequentially. If so, the synchronicity demonstrated remarkable foresight by whoever had designed his preservation protocols, most likely his parents working with Uzushio's most sophisticated psychological specialists. The aircraft departed Athens with mission objectives party. Ally achieved. Prisoners secured for intelligence gathering, remaining artifacts preserved for continued research, facility damage contained without civilian casualties. Yet significant concerns remain. Unaddressed. Escaped Uchiha leader possessing partial extraction data, references to imminent convergence, corresponding with astronomical alignment Hinata had identified, and organizational struct. You're clearly operating with multi-generational strategic framework. As they approached the Hyuga compound where Sakura awaited with prepared stabilization treatment, Naruto recognized that events were accelerating toward critical threshold. Ancient enemies now actively engaged, prophecies manifesting with disturbing precision, and powers continuing to develop without corresponding control mechanisms fully established. The last sage was remembering not just abilities but purpose, defined not through abstract directive but lived experience across catastrophe's boundary. Whatever challenges lay ahead, this integration of memory with present capability would prove either essential foundation or critical vulnerability. Time alone would determine which. Chapter 3 End. The End. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.